Welcome to Blamestorming. Blamestorming. In a post-truth world, there's plenty of blame to go around. 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 Join Dave Cyrus and Marissa Smith as they blamestorm about today's hot topics.
Hey guys, welcome to Blamestorming. I'm Marissa Smith. I've got Dave Cyrus with me.
Yes.
I've got Heather Height with me.
Hello.
And I've got Caitlin Bailey with me.
Thanks for having me.
So, Dave, how was your week?
Good. Who's the announcer on our opening, on our intro?
That would be a fine young gentleman that I purchased a intro from on Fiverr.
We paid for that?
Wonderfully British.
We did.
We know people. We don't have to throw money away on British black people.
It wasn't it was me, and and I liked his voice. So I was gonna go with this guy that did like a Morgan Freeman impersonating voice, but he was too expensive, so I went with the British guy.
All right, I don't want you throwing your money away.
How did you know he was black?
I have ears.
I didn't know he was black.
Yeah, no, I feel like black English people sound like the future.
That is the
I think
future.
they are the future.
That is the future.
Yeah, like it's just whenever I hear it, I feel like it's like, oh, this is what the future is going to sound
Now,
like.
I want to be clear. Marissa is black. I know you can't tell from her voice.
I can tell because I'm sitting next to her.
I'd be more uncomfortable saying these things if she wasn't here.
I do feel more comfortable with
I
my
don't
eyes
hear
than my
color,
ears.
David.
I try to remind people every episode up top.
You do remind every episode up top. I've even put my photo on our website, and
We don't know that they saw it.
but we don't.
We need
don't.
people to know.
But why is this such a concern of yours?
Because...
He doesn't want to be accused of racism.
Right. I need you as cover for that constantly.
He's using you as a shield, which is frankly pretty racist.
a human
Yeah.
shield.
Yeah.
This is how the left is racist, you guys. They in their attempts of inclusion, they exclude. It's like, oh, you are the only black person in the room, because Dave books it that way.
We were hoping you wouldn't talk. We just wanted you here for the picture. I don't
Yeah,
understand.
we don't- Yeah, it's like, oh my god,
I didn't know
this
you're going to be making decisions and
like
having opinions.
she hired a black voice. She's talking.
I was more upset he was British, but I hadn't heard that before. I wanted
Well,
to.
that wasn't the full song. Like we haven't like that was just like the quick intro. You haven't heard the full song yet.
So it gets longer.
Well, that's the intro part is the same. The song is longer
Okay.
because we, meaning me, also paid for a song.
Yes. Well, good
Yeah.
job.
Yeah.
I could have gotten that for free too.
Like
I didn't know we were.
Sounds like you're not really involved in the decision making here.
That's a conscious decision. By
Okay,
me.
all right,
Yes.
well
You're
then-
just here for the picture, Dave.
I show up and I talk.
Okay.
This is Marissa's show.
Well,
Yeah.
I couldn't tell from how strong your opinions were on the choices she's made that you'd put her in a leadership position. Jesus.
he didn't put me in a leader I allowed him to come along
Well, there you go. Well, then shut your mouth, Dave.
because I don't know if everyone can hear, but Dave is Jewish, so
They could-
like
Obviously, they could tell that from my voice.
I don't know because like you don't sound like you're from like I don't know New York.
Poland.
No, or anywhere like I don't know.
1930s Poland is what you're thinking of.
I was actually
voice you're
thinking
looking
of like
for.
1970s Brooklyn, but you know, whatever.
That
I
could be
was
anyone.
searching for anti-Semitic things. I was like swamps, like what are we what are we doing? And I was like, for all the Jew violence happening, I don't know enough anti-Semitic like things. I was searching for the joke and I couldn't find it.
Well, first of all, Jews in the 1970s sounded like Italians, so you're not going to find
true.
anyone that
That's
way
true.
either.
Yeah, that's true.
It was a big problem we had. They just couldn't stop.
Arthur Fonzarelli.
I don't know. I
led
feel
the-
like you're
led the
not
wave.
gonna hear like a Brooklyn Italian like say like a Minch or like
You won't hear a Brooklyn Jew say it either. Not in the 70s. Andrew Dice Clay is a Brooklyn 70s Jew.
Yes.
That's what we sounded like then. And my whole family went to high school with him, and they all sound like him. But also, Italians do say mensch in Brooklyn, so...
Nobody ever cares that I tell this story, but I live like in the Flatbush area.
Yeah.
And there's a whole movie that the Arthur Fonzarelli character is based on that came from a movie called the Lords of Flatbush.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Did you ever hear that?
No.
It was like a 50s movie. Like the opening to Grease is an homage to the Lords of Flatbush.
Oh no, I didn't
and
know
the
that.
character Arthur Fons, and he's also a Brooklyn Jew.
Oh, there you go.
Or his character is like, I don't even know if he's originally from Brooklyn. What's his face?
Well, the character
The
is
character
a
is-
Brooklyn Italian that they originally wanted a blonde guy to play, and then a tiny Jew named Henry Winkler did such a good job in the audition that they changed the character, kind of like with Nightmare on Elm Street.
Oh, that's Barbara Streisand in that movie that was supposed to be about an Irish chick.
Yentl?
No. That was accurately cast. No, this one's the funny lady, or no, the one where she played
Funny lady.
Dolly. Hello, Dolly.
Hello,
Dolly.
Dolly.
Is it?
Yeah,
It's
Dolly is
the
an
redhead,
Irish woman. Yeah,
Not
Irish.
funny girl. Not funny.
No, funny girl, Jewish, definitely. It's in the song. Hello, Dolly. Dolly's an Irish name. That's the trick.
Oh, that's a person's name.
Yeah, Dolly with the singing and the making people happy and the
I
spending
didn't see
money.
it.
I don't know.
Well, since we're talking so much about the Jews right now, did you guys hear that Putin is now blaming the election meddling on the Jews?
That makes all the
Well,
sense.
Oh, yeah.
What he said was in his, just vamping while talking to Megyn Kelly, he just said, how do we know these were Russians? They could have been Jews or Tatars, which, I feel like
What's a
Is it a new racial slur?
it's just a thing in Russia, a people in Russia, the Tatar.
Oh.
And it was, I don't see why no one is attacking him for, bringing them out either. I don't think just the Jews should be offended. He made it clear that he doesn't really consider Jews in Russia.
I mean, no one's ever heard of the
Russians.
Tatars, so we're just like, all right, like maybe they make the sauce. I don't know.
I hope you get 7 angry emails from all
All
7
seven
Tatters.
Tattars,
Yeah,
yeah.
I hope that's what happens.
They're
And
like
by the way, I hope we're saying it wrong.
Tatters? Totters?
Tatars. Yeah.
Oh, it's a new slur. I'm excited.
it's-
Who are these people?
Honestly, if it's Tatars, then go to hell. I'm not saying that.
Too close to centaurs. Wait, no. It's centaur. Never
Centaur.
mind. Centaurs.
Too close to a
don't-
word that doesn't exist.
Never mind.
Yeah.
But yeah, he was. Well, I mean, that interview was. It was the idea of watching someone trying not to get caught for doing something he can't be punished for. So it was sort of like, it's like your kids interrogating you about whether or not you're going to go to Disneyland. You don't want to admit the truth, but at the same time, what the hell are they going to do?
What are they going to do?
And that was what he was doing. He said, how do you know that? I mean, he was just kind of bullshitting her. I mean, he kept saying to be like, well, you don't have a law degree. So yeah, I do. Oh, well, I'm going to say the same thing I was going to say anyway. No, I mean, because Putin, he no longer feels like he lives in a world where there could be consequences. So he'll just
I
say
see
whatever.
how he got there. I follow his logic.
Yeah.
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 Well, he's saying,
gone
well,
on too long.
You're saying that someone in Russian government did this. Well, maybe it wasn't a Russian. Maybe it was a Jew because they're nothing.
Maybe it was
They're
a
not-
flat earther. Yeah. Just, ugh.
So yeah, he just, I mean, he's just deflecting to Jews because it's, he knows how to
What a
get the right
hack.
people's attention.
What a hack scapegoat,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
What a hack 1939 scapegoat.
Yeah. It's just like, oh, we've seen this movie.
Yeah, it does feel like we're all trapped in a dystopian nightmare, doesn't it? Is
Yeah.
everyone waking up in a cold sweat?
I feel like we're
Well,
more
the last time I saw you was actually election night.
Yeah.
And I was doing an election show at the Creek in the Cave, and you were there.
And
Like-
blackout, right?
Like, you didn't seem blacked out at the time.
Okay.
Like, yeah, but you and I were just like, what the fuck's happening right now?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just like, I just remember being like, I'm about to shit my pants. And you're like, I'm totally shitting my pants. And then some girl tried to fight me in the bathroom. It was quite an interesting
Wait,
night.
what?
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
That's nuts.
Yeah. So
White girl.
Yeah. So
Well, I mean, yeah.
it's the Creek.
Let's-
Yeah. What?
So I was waiting for the bathroom, and this girl was in there for a super long time, and I knocked on the door and waited, and still she didn't come out.
Mm-hmm.
Came went back, had more of my beer, came back to the bathroom, still didn't
Sure.
come out. Knocked again, and this is probably now it's closer to 15 minutes. Then finally she flings open the door, and then she's like, "Are you having a problem?" And I'm like, are you having a problem?
Yeah, we're literally all shitting ourselves. This isn't just you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, because there was only one bathroom working at the time.
Yeah,
and
'cause
it's
it's
just
the
like,
creek.
yeah, exactly. And it's just like, lady, like, be a human, do your drugs at home. People need to pee. Like,
Yeah.
you know, like, what are you doing?
Or it's the creek. Just do your drugs. Why are you hiding in the bathroom?
Yeah,
It's the
like
best-
people just literally, because like if like I walked in there and it like smelled like she had blown up the toilet, then I'd be like, all right,
Oh,
she
yeah.
can't eat this food.
Yeah, she
But,
can't
like-
eat this food, or like it's election night, and some of us manifest that differently. I mean, I've shit liquid for like a full week after that. You know, I mean, I
Yeah.
still throw up on subway. Like, yeah, no,
Yeah.
yeah.
But it was
Stomach
just like,
issues aside, do your drugs out in the open. Don't be a monster.
yeah, like people need to use the bathroom. So like then like I come back out and she's like, I think we need to talk, and I'm like, okay, about what? She's like, well, I think that you misunderstood what just happened there, and I think we're having a problem. And I'm like, are we having a problem? And then like this other
You get to decide if it's a problem or not. What are you talking about? I mean, I guess. You think what part of you think I misunderstood that you were in the bathroom for too fucking long and now you're out? This could be over. You could decide for this to be over.
So like I literally just like and like another comic was just like, oh, Marissa, she wants to fight you, and I was just like, okay, are you trying to fight me right now? And then she's like, and I'm like, just walked away from her, and then she's just like, oh, she's so ignorant, she just walked away from me, and then she's like, you can't walk away from me, and I'm like, oh, really?
So totally
and then
just
I just
did
like, and I literally walked away from her again as she's telling me that
you're
I
part
can't
of
walk.
the 53%. That's a
Yeah.
53%er right there.
Yeah, that is a
that
53%.
bitch.
It's
Yeah.
a comic, right?
No, she was just like a lay person that was like in the creek.
Which makes her a sociopath.
Yes.
I mean, if she's a non-comic hanging out at the creek on a Tuesday, that
Yeah.
already she's filled with symptoms.
She's just, I don't know. To me, she looked like she was like a substitute teacher or something like that. She gave me that like I'm an education vibe.
Oh no.
Oh man.
You know, like those
Teachers
like,
in bars are the worst people.
Yeah, they really are.
I've never met a teacher in a bar that I was like, oh, I'm so happy you're a teacher. I'm
Yeah,
glad
no,
that
they're
you're teaching
monsters.
children."
Monsters. It's like this is exactly why, like, you know, you're like ruining the next generation is because you're a monster.
Speaking of ruining the next generation, did you guys catch that Betsy DeVos interview?
No.
Yes.
Horrifying.
Yes. It's pretty great.
It's I've only watched little clips of it because I just keep masturbating. It's like, I don't know. Like
What was great about it is that like I had some argument with an old Italian guy in a deli last week, and he brought something up about Trump, and we had a little discussion. It wasn't even like an argument, and it was very interesting because this wasn't a guy I knew, but he was very kind of stereotypical, the kind of person who defends Trump, just a very simplistic alpha male type.
Yeah.
And it was really interesting the way that like he wanted so badly to push his like views, and seemed like a guy who was forced about everything he believes, but when he tried to defend Trump, it was like there was this weird like just shrinking that happened where he
Right.
just kind of fell apart, because the first point he had was, well, you know, the important thing is that he hires the best people. I'm like, that's just something you used to say about Bush that you don't realize doesn't apply here, does it? Because that was what Bush kept saying. They kept saying to defend Bush's stupidity. Trump's biggest problem is that he only hires unqualified sycophants.
Right.
And Betsy DeVos is the single worst example of that, even worse than the children of him and his son-in-law being hired, because this woman really doesn't know what the fuck she's talking
the
about.
whole interview, she had the facial expression of someone who doesn't realize they've been yelling at the manager / owner the whole time. That's the energy that she
Well,
had.
she was terrified. You could see a
Yeah.
terror in her face that she did not realize she was going to be questioned about anything. This woman who had to admit in the moment she didn't know any of the basic things you would have to know to even work under her.
Right. Like
It-
the undersecretary would have given a more informative, if they even hired an
Has that position
undersecretary.
been filled?
Yeah.
Or is it just an
yeah.
empty hallway of despair?
Yeah.
Well, she was only hired because she's same reason they hired, Scott Pruitt for the EPA. They hire people who want to destroy the
Yes.
organization they're in, and she was hired because she's a billionaire who doesn't believe in public school. So she
I
got
so
caught
wish I
in
knew
the
who
moment.
this person was and what. I have no input here.
She's a
Blonde
billionaire.
psychopath.
She's the Secretary of Education. She's a billionaire
her
who has
brother-
no. She's never worked in education in any way.
Her brother does.
Eric Prince.
Eric Prince.
Eric Prince, who is the owner
Blackwater.
of Blackwater.
All right.
Do you know what?
I think I know what
The
Black
largest
I am
private
so
army
apolitical,
of
not involved.
mercenaries.
I'm like having an alien on the show who's just watching you humans. I'm not,
We'll get to hookers in a minute.
Okay.
yeah, get the hookers. I know hookers. I'm all about that.
Yeah.
But yeah, she. We saw this before where she doesn't know it. She was the one who actually used a joke from The Simpsons without realizing it, where she said the reason we need to have guns in schools is in case of
Bears, yeah.
Which is why Grandpa Simpson said they should keep a gun in the house too. As a joke.
By bears, do they mean like
No,
the
don't.
bird?
Don't.
All right,
No.
all right, all right. Because I know they hate the gays.
I know.
So,
I know.
all
Look,
right,
it crossed all our minds, and we all vetoed it before saying it.
Sorry,
out loud.
I'm sorry. All right.
Hey, she took that chance.
But
Yeah.
yeah,
Support you.
Betsy. Well, she wasn't just lying. She was bullshitting, because you could see in the moment she was just kind of saying things without thinking about them, because when she got a follow-up question, she would freak out.
Right.
Because she was asked about does taking money. She argued that taking money out of public schools helps public schools.
Yeah.
She said because
By making them more competitive, because they got to compete for the money. They got to compete.
Is this the Bowling
She
Green
really-
lady?
no.
No,
No.
that's
Okay.
that's
That's a
Kellyanne Conway.
Yeah.
I wish you guys had a camera so that your listeners could see my deer in headlights. Like,
Right.
I don't
We
know.
do.
This is-
Right
You
there
sort
and
of
right there.
look like Betsy DeVos during the interview.
Oh,
that's,
okay.
That's,
That'd be
yeah.
a good example
That's a
of
good
this
point.
person.
But like her go-to answer for everything is we need to make schools safe for children and make an environment conducive for learning. Like that was her only answer for everything, and it's just
But
like
she wants to do that by systematically destroying the things that make schools okay.
Well, she was put in that position because the position of the administration is public schools are worthless.
Yes.
And we should just be getting as many kids out of it as possible.
Yeah, if you can't afford to send your child to a public school, you can't afford to live, is the system we're hoping to create.
Well, it's the same argument about why they want to take away EBT and food stamps. It's
Right.
because they think that if you, in the same way that they have Ben Carson saying he wants to make public housing as uncomfortable
Yes.
as possible, it's all the same attitude. If you give people anything for free, they'll never want anything more.
Right.
And they're extending that to education now.
Well, because money is an indicator of God's good graces. I don't know if you guys know that, but
Oh,
God,
no, I wasn't aware.
yeah, absolutely. God gives good people money. That's how God works, and punishes people for being poor. So we have to punish the poor, otherwise God's going to be mad. You can read all about Jesus,
and then
those
you'll
are
lose
the,
your own money,
Right,
because
yeah,
you know
because
you're being too nice to the poor,
the poor people,
that
and
are
that's not very
godless and
Christian of
yeah,
you.
exactly.
I mean, it's why they
Yeah.
want to replace EBT with a box of food, because they're just, it's the idea
you-
that if you're going to get free food, you
you-
shouldn't enjoy it.
You guys know that we've already done that as a country, right? We did that. That's what we did with the Native American reservations. Yeah. So like all of the stuff that they're doing, they've tried on even more marginalized populations, and then it sort of like slowly expands, which is one of the reasons why I think hookers are really like the canaries in the coal mine for a lot of civil liberties. So like that was my
Nice
effort.
bring it around.
Thank
That-
you.
that
I
was your way trying to
that was-
segue
You guys
into it.
see me segue in transition.
Heather,
And
do you
I'll
have
get
any-
there when I want to. Thank you.
Do I have any more?
I was going to say, does Heather have something to say about prostitution? But no, we're not going to get there yet. It's only 20
I have
minutes
things
in.
about
All right. I'm
welfare that I
sorry.
could say.
Exactly.
you
I'm
guys
fully
run your
aware
own
of the
show.
time. So we can transition into some talk of sex work. Did you guys hear that Stormy Daniels is now offering to return the $138,000 so that she can speak freely about her relationship with Trump?
I did not. But
Set her free.
I mean,
Good.
it's obviously just a taunt.
Talking about canaries in the coal mine.
yes.
He's not going to take the money. It's a taunt, but it's a good taunt.
It's a
how
great
hilarious.
taunt.
Has she not talked about it though? Like, I'll give you back
No,
the
she
money
has
so
not.
I
She
can
has not.
keep on
All
talking
of the
about this.
all. This is so funny. Trump has so aggressively done this to himself.
Yeah.
Right, because they started negotiations for the NDA, right, and then because negotiations were taking so fucking long, because Trump thinks that he can just tell people to shut their whore
Or
mouths
he can
whenever
just
he
tweet
wants
it,
to,
yeah.
right? She started doing these interviews with journalists in order to get his to put some fire under his butt, and so when that happened, she honored the agreement, but she was forced into reaching out to journalists in order to get the agreement at all. So
Yeah.
it's so all of the stuff that exists out there is his fucking fault for not doing the shit he said he was gonna fucking do. I mean,
Stormy Daniels has not publicly said, since Trump has been president, that she had an affair with him.
Not
She's
since- no.
implied it.
Right.
She's referred to interviews she did before. She has made
Just
Make
obvious
America horny
but
again tour.
She has not done anything that she can get sued for.
So she
for-
stayed
from her
within the
NDA.
parameters of her
She
agreement.
wants to be able to publicly say, because she has pictures and video. And I mean, my assumption is that in 10 years from now, we're going to finally see the video of Trump doing an interview that he calls "If I Fucked Her." It's gonna be the same
I
thing
want to
OJ
see
did.
him getting peed on by Russian chicks. I
I'm
wanna
very
see
excited.
That.
It's gonna
for that footage
happen
as
when
well.
Russia has a reason
I
to punish
also
him.
cannot wait to see how hot Pence's boyfriend is.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I
Oh,
think that
man.
he's got like the cutest little Filipino twink you've ever
Yes.
seen. Like totally.
You know he does.
Yeah.
Yeah, I bet him and Anderson Cooper have the same taste.
Yeah.
They're the same hair, kind of too.
The thing that I think is interesting though is that in the gag order, it's like there's very specific things that she can't talk about. Like she can't talk about any video, she can't talk about any photographs, but she also can't talk about anything paternal related to him.
That's sort of a thing that it's not that she has a kid. It's that's sort of a something the lawyers add just in case. But yeah, the idea that she can't talk about any paternity related things, as in the implication being that she got impregnated by him.
I
right?
thought it couldn't talk about his paternal fetish because he definitely wants to fuck his daughter. Like I thought that's what that
I
was.
thought that he
No,
told
she's
her
already
that
said
he
that.
fucked his daughter, and she can't talk about that.
No, that's not what it means. No, the what you're referring to is
Paternity.
the sort of just something that gets added onto any of these cheating wife, mistress
Just in case.
NDAs. They say you cannot talk about anything, including if you got an abortion of his baby or if you had an illegitimate child. We would know if she had a child around that year. So, but we might not know if she had an abortion though. So it
This is true,
it could refer to that.
She just have this kid walking around with a little suit on.
But she did say that. Yeah, she did say that he said that she reminded him of Ivanka.
we
right.
know that he
Probably-
doesn't use condoms because he talked about the 80s and having sex as his
Was
personal
numb.
Vietnam.
Yeah.
So, you know.
Well, she said he didn't use condoms. Yeah, she
Yeah.
said he didn't use condoms. But also, I mean, I would think Trump is not going to have a mistress he has to use condoms with. That's too low class for him. He's dating a porn star for a reason because porn stars can't get STDs.
Oh yeah, that's true.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
Because they get
Because
tested.
they prayed the AIDS away.
Well, no one
That's
has.
how-
No one
that's
seems
how
to
it
use
worked.
condoms with porn stars. Tiger didn't use condoms when he had his porn with Lisa Ann.
Right.
Remember, she said she got
Right.
an abortion because
Yeah.
he wasn't using condoms and didn't ask if she was on birth control. Which, in Tiger's defense, I could see assuming that Lisa Ann was on birth control.
Yeah,
Sure.
she is like totally into being blown in. Like she's like that's her thing. She like tweets about like I love it when guys come in me. She's not on.
I mean,
don't follow
who
her
among
Twitter.
us doesn't love
That's the best part.
a
right?
hot load of cum? I mean, like, that's all right.
You don't love a hot load of cum, Dave?
You
I notice
love
our
it.
engineer's hand is still down. Okay, putting both hands up is too much protesting.
He's expecting a cop, I guess. So I know that this is what you guys have been waiting for. So the Stop Enabling Sex Trafficking Act it's now. Did they put that on the floor today? Or is
SESTA, no, it was scheduled for a floor vote in the Senate on Tuesday. They've moved it. It's still possibly happening this week. Guesses are Wednesday or Friday, but it looks like they're starting to get just a little bit of heat, so they've moved it.
Here's the reason
Yeah.
I don't think you should worry about this bill.
Okay.
I bet a lot of people in Congress have at some point in their life had sex with a prostitute, and I don't think any of those men would vote against a prostitute's best interests.
A lot of leadership historically have been fucking prostitutes.
Right,
We've
so
never
that means
prevented
they
them
like
from
them.
fucking us over.
No, that means
Ever.
doesn't that mean they like them and
No.
that they're going to help them? Because
No, a hot
they-
load of cum does not civil liberties protect.
But they've had
Oh, I want
sex.
that on a cross stitch.
But if they've had sex with these prostitutes, aren't they going to want be like, oh well, I know prostitutes, I should help them out here and not stop them from working.
So now, for people that don't know what this bill entails, why
Which
don't
is
you
most people?
So,
right?
like, why don't you break this down?
Yeah, so the House bill, FOSTA, already passed, and it was like 25 votes against and like 300 something odd for. It's a very popular bipartisan bill in Trump's America, which should terrify everyone. But the SESTA bill stands for Stop Enabling Sex Trafficking Act, and essentially what it does is it shifts liability from individuals to platforms when holding
Even if
them.
they don't know. That
Yes,
it's going on.
even when the platforms don't know what's happening, to try to crack down on people posting ads for sex workers, and this is across the board, right? So they say that they're targeting traffic victims, and they say that they're targeting children, but they're cracking down on all adult sex workers unilaterally, pushing the whole industry further into the dark, which only makes things more dangerous and more violent
Also
for trafficking
preventing them
victims and
from
adults.
using sites that allow them to do
Work
background
indoors.
checks. And,
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they're cracking down on sites that sex workers have created for themselves to try to keep themselves safe. So they're cracking down on blacklists where you can post violent clients that violate your boundaries or don't pay you or like get weird with you. You can post about that to help protect other sex workers. It prevents you from posting ads, which enables you to screen your clients and work indoors, which is sort of a big deal if you want fewer dead hookers. And it also prevents FAQs or organizing sex workers coming together. They can be prosecuted for promoting prostitution.
And the idea is to put prostitutes back on street corners.
Yeah, that's
is
the idea.
essentially what the goal
Right.
of this is, to get them back on
Yep.
corners where they can be rounded up. And
Yep, absolutely. And it's scary in a lot of ways. I, as a comedian, am terrified of it from a free speech perspective, right? Because the federal government can't prevent people from posting because that's a First Amendment issue. But if you shift liability to platforms, right, how long is it going to take before Twitter, Facebook, Google, Amazon, all these private companies are like, you know what, it's just not worth the liability to let people say what they want on the internet. It's too dangerous. We can't take it. Not if we're going to get sued.
any site that allows people to date is going to lend itself to people being able to use it for prostitution, because if you use like Tinder, you do see people that look like hookers.
Yeah, of course.
And usually they say something in it so that they'll say something like, I'm looking for a sugar daddy or
Sure.
whatever. I mean, that's basically code for what that is, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I know anytime a really good looking woman matches with me on Tinder, I automatically assume it's a hooker and I don't contact her.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Because I mean,
You're a
it's
weird dude.
well, I mean, look, I can get some women, but not
Not most of them.
at a certain threshold. I'm like, there's no way that she'd have sex with me for free.
If she looks expensive, she's probably expensive.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, how do you stop women from just using dating sites? Isn't that what happened?
It seems like willfully naive thinking to think that the oldest profession can be stomped out by taking something away from the internet. Like this, obviously the oldest profession predates the fucking internet.
I mean, when they
We could
shut
all
down,
just like put red lights outside of our
when
apartments
they
again.
shut down Backpage, wasn't there like
Yes. Well,
I saw like some guy saying like all you've done is made them just move on to dating sites, and now women
Yep.
looking for actual dates
Yep.
are completely drowned in.
Yeah, but a lot of those women also, like, they got displaced, right? Because they were relying on Backpage for a steady source of income. And so when they shut down Backpage and, like, in the moments where everyone's scrambling before there's an alternative, right? You're losing money there. A lot of people were, like, it just makes people more vulnerable, financially, emotionally, more vulnerable to being arrested and locked up. I mean, it's a net negative.
The people that are supporting this bill are definitely saying that this is to try to protect people that have been trafficked, and especially children that are being trafficked.
Absolutely.
And that it's trying to kind of close a loophole that victims of trafficking can now be able to sue these sites for allowing these ads to go on their sites that trafficked them.
But there are no trafficking victims that are asking for this bill. That's not where it's coming from.
Well, from like things that I've read about it, because like I had a little time to like catch up on it. It's been like some of the parents of children that had been trafficked that were murdered. One was she was, I guess, lured on the internet. She was 16 years old. I guess met this guy on some site, thought that he was like a real guy that like was interested in her, flew out to somewhere, ended up getting trafficked, and her John killed her. And so the mom has spoken to...
Wait, her pimp killed her or a client killed her?
Client killed her.
Client killed her.
Client killed her. He, I guess the pimp put the ad out on Backpage, forced her to go out on this date, and then then was killed on Christmas Eve. She was 16, and the parents are supporting this bill because their daughter was murdered. So I think that it's difficult to try to sell the idea that, well, this is going to hurt. Like,
here's how this bill is going to hurt that trafficking victim specifically, right?
Okay.
So the websites that you can post ads on, right, are theoretically available for people that are doing due diligence to if this guy has either killed prostitutes in the past. So a lot of serial killers target sex workers because they're more vulnerable and people don't report them missing. So hopefully he could end up on a blacklist that could be checked. This bill will prevent that from happening. So there's no more blacklisting available on the internet. That's a violation of this new federal law. So if this guy had made sex workers uncomfortable in the past, or if he ended up on a blacklist, that could have been a way to prevent this murder. Reference checking would be another way to prevent this murder. So theoretically, this John could call into the ad posted either by this, person or by her traffickers and say, hey, we need to check your references. Presumably serial killers that target sex workers don't have a bunch of references. This bill would make that illegal. This bill would essentially force her traffickers from like putting an ad up on the website where they at least have the option of checking for safety stuff and force them to put her out on the street where anyone driving a car.
But do you honestly think a sex trafficker is going to check safety references of a John?
No, I don't. But I think that taking that option away from adult sex workers isn't going to make a single person safer.
But also, this woman was killed because, first of all, she was seduced by a pimp who got her to move somewhere. This bill would have nothing to do with that. This wouldn't affect anything about that. She didn't meet him on a prostitution site. He just found her in the way that anyone would still be able to with freedom of speech. More importantly, though, if we lived in a world where prostitution was legal and regulated, it would prevent people underage from doing this because you would.
How is it going to prevent people underage
in the
from
same
being
way it was
prostitutes?
easier for me to get pot when I was in middle school than it was for me to get cigarettes, right? Because I could walk into a store and they're going to ask for my ID, but no drug dealer was ever going to ask me for my ID, right? If you have a healthy decriminalized system, your active adult sex workers are your best eyes on the ground to find victims of violence and victims of trafficking, because we know what consensual adult sex work looks like and we know what abuse looks like.
But also,
we can help people if we can report it. But if in reporting abuse, in reporting violence, in reporting exploitation, we're admitting to a crime and are arrested on that, then now you don't have eyes on the ground anymore. So all this bill does, it's sort of like the migration stuff, right? So what you realize that when you crack down on borders, you don't stop migrants. You just make the smugglers more and more violent by taking out the first layer of people that would just want to help people. Remember, smugglers could just be a dude with a boat or a van. Like, that's, you look hungry and scared, you're trying to go there, cool, let me help you. That could be a smuggler.
Yeah.
Now you crack down and there's all kinds of violence and all kinds of police force and all kinds of stuff. Now you're paying somebody $25,000 to get you from point A to point B. You're in debt slavery to them for the rest of your life. That's when the violence and the smuggling, that's when shit gets bad. So this SEPTA bill isn't going to prevent a single instance of sex trafficking. It's just going to make it harder for adult sex workers.
Lazy scapegoating.
It's very lazy scapegoating.
But also think of it this way: if we lived in a country where all adult sex workers had to be regulated, the way that like as England, right? Where they have to be tested.
Let's look at Nevada.
Yeah, sure.
Nevada's
Nevada,
probably
of
a
course.
better
We have it in
example.
this country where you have to be tested and you have to be an adult.
You
If
also
that
have to
was the
register at
case,
the sheriff's office, work
Right.
12-hour shifts, and give half your money to the house. But, it's not perfect.
if that was the case, then the only people who would have to do it on the black market illegally are the ones who were either underage or like HIV positive. And if you
already
knew
illegal.
those are the only people doing
people
it
with
on
a
the
criminal
street,
record.
then you would know who's on the street. It'd be a
people
lot
who are here
easier
illegally.
It'd be so much easier to know who shouldn't be doing this. So of course you would cut down on child prostitution, because child prostitutes wouldn't just be mixed in with the women on the street who now can't use any of the things you referred
Right.
to on the internet.
Right. I mean, I understand what you're saying, but at the same time, I was going to bars when I was 15. It wasn't like it was illegal. Like it
was illegal.
But that's what I'm saying is that like the fact that it was illegal didn't stop the fact that like we were going to bars when we were 15. So making I kind of feel like this is the same argument as that children in schools will be safer if teachers had guns. Because if you give the teacher a gun, then they're going to be able to stop an active
Those
shooter.
damn kids from yelling.
It's exactly. But like I think that like from what I've been reading about this bill is that they seem to be saying that they're going to be more focused on trafficked individuals.
Well, like,
That's
take Operation Cross
complete
Country,
bullshit.
right? So Operation Cross Country is a federal holiday, basically, Jubilee, where they put like a bunch of federal resources into local police departments to round up trafficking victims. And every year they self-report the number of adult sex workers that they caught, the number of underage escorts that they caught, and the number of pimps that they caught. They make this they make this information available. And it is always, even in the best case scenario, like 80% adult sex trafficking in like single digits underage girls. Now, I personally started doing sex work when I was 17.
Whoa. What?
What?
Which part of that is the whoa? I don't
Back up. Tell us the story. I'm saying the audience doesn't know. I'm just
Oh, yeah. Okay, thanks. Weirdo. I started doing sex work when I was 17, which means that if I was rounded up by cross country, I would be put in as a sex trafficking victim. But I didn't have a pimp. I just had access to like the internet and not enough obstacles in my way. So like I put up my own ad and I like arranged my own dates. So there was nobody in control or like coercing me at all. So I like it's a weird like who they label as a traffic victim is weird and fucked up. And even based on those weird and fucked up metrics, they're mostly getting consensual adult sex workers and putting them in cages in this weird looking for this perfect victim that doesn't exist. I mean, like, for example, there was a woman a couple of months ago who was charged with trafficking herself. There was a sting in Seattle where women were arrested for trafficking each other because they worked together and tried to like provide background checks for each other and like shared
kids
a space.
Charged with distributing
child pornography because
child
they have
pornography.
images of
Each
their
other.
own dick on their phone. Like
Yeah.
it's like this. What they say they're doing is really distant from what they're
right, but
actually
like
fucking doing.
from like your I understand what you're saying, but at the same time, like what you're kind of saying is that you don't, or this is what I'm gathering is
Sure.
that you don't believe that child trafficking is a problem.
I believe that it exists. It is not as much of a problem as the propaganda would let you to believe. I don't think that there are
So
women
then
that are
it's-
being kidnapped off the street and violently forced into sex trafficking to the tune of hundreds and thousands of lost girls every year. That's
So
not
now,
happening.
if child trafficking is not a problem, or child pornography is not a problem, then why do we have so many people that are even celebrities? We had that guy from that I can't even remember the name of that show anymore. He just killed himself because he was caught with child porn. It's like, what was that?
Glee.
Glee, yeah.
The guy from Glee who had child porn.
We had
yeah. And
Jared.
He was also accused of rape, also of women.
Right.
Yeah, Jared Foe. No, it's not that child. It's not that child abuse isn't a problem, but when you're using the argument, child porn is a problem, and that's why we need to stop all porn. It's a bullshit
Right.
argument.
Yeah.
And this is the exact
But are
same
they
thing as
saying
that.
that they're stopping porn, or are they saying that they're trying to prevent people from being trafficked on the internet?
No, they're
because
trying to
no one-
eradicate.
they're not saying that porn sites are going to be taken down. Like if you're actually watching video of porn, they're saying that they're trying to hold websites accountable that are allowing ads to happen that people can be trafficked on.
Right.
Yeah,
They're
but
not trying
didn't
to
they
eradicate porn. They're
But
trying
didn't
to
they
eradicate
shut
prostitution.
Didn't they shut down Backpage from having prostitution
Yes.
because they made sure the women were over 18?
Yes.
And they said that by making sure the women were over 18, that proves you're culpable and you know what they're doing?
Yeah, so what happens in that case is like Backpage got shut down, and what Backpage was doing was Backpage was asking for people that were trying to post ads to prove their identity, so that like you'd fax like a copy of your driver's license just to Backpage, so that they could verify that you were over age. Huge problem once Backpage got seized and searched. So now there are all of these adult sex workers whose identifying information is now in the headquarters of somewhere with Backpage. Whether or not that's protected is still a big mystery to the adult sex workers I know who
So
used to advertise on there.
Previous to this bill,
Yeah.
Backpage wouldn't be held responsible
Well, they
for
were
the ads.
well, they were shut down and before this bill, and
But
they're
not
being
charged with anything.
I'm not 100% up to date on that. I
I
know like
believe
a lot
it
of
was
people got
that they would only
questioned.
been responsible for specific acts, and now
Right.
it's just having the site itself is enough to be shut
right.
down.
Yes, absolutely.
Like
And
if they hadn't found anyone a child on the site, they wouldn't have been able to do
I think
anything.
they found
and now it doesn't
3
matter.
people underage in like a decade of searching through records. But now there are lots of other websites that are available that have servers in foreign countries where the U.S. doesn't have jurisdiction, and they're not doing any age checking.
Yeah.
So thank God we cracked down on the problem of Backpage trying to do due diligence, and they smacked that down. And what happened? It popped up somewhere else with fewer regulations where there's actually more opportunity for exploitation than what was happening here.
It's important to remember that we're not saying that we want there to be child prostitution not be
No.
cracked down on. But the thing is, it's just like when Jeff Sessions says we need to stop marijuana because of the opium epidemic.
Yeah.
It's a lie to get to the villain you want to get because you know the American people aren't really behind it.
Well, also
Right.
actually doing things that would actually crack down on actual child prostitution would be helpful rather than
Yeah. If you want to
know.
crack down on slavery and exploitation in the U.S., I think the place to look where that's really happening is domestic labor. That's where, like, you have children who are functioning as basically slaves in people's homes. You have, like, there's an exploitation and trafficking problem in this country and globally, but it doesn't look like sex trafficking. It looks like labor trafficking. You look at migrant farm workers. You look at domestic laborers. You look at people that work in nail salons. I mean, there's trafficking here, but it doesn't necessarily look like this story that we've been sold.
Because there's nothing in the Ten Commandments about slavery. It's not. No, I'm not joking. I'm saying
I
there's
know.
There's
just so many
nothing-
other instances
Slavery.
if you're going to bring up Bible. You
I'm
know?
saying slavery is not really something that is taught as being bad in mainstream religion, but sex is specifically, non-married sex. So it's not a sexy issue in that way to go after domestic,
Underpaid,
Yeah.
overworked. Yeah.
people who are essentially treated like slaves because they're brought here with the promise of work that they
Mm-hmm.
don't really get. We've seen that many times. We've
Yep.
seen the epidemic of like Nigerian immigrants who are used as slave labor inside countries that do not have slavery.
Mm-hmm.
And
Well, that's a problem in New Jersey, and a lot of like the hair braiding salons in New Jersey. That the hair braiders are actually like enslaved people, but it still doesn't really change the fact that like even in airports that you have regular, I guess, airline workers that are checking people in that are supposed to be on the lookout for trafficked children.
Yeah, do you know what happened a couple of months ago? We actually covered this on the Oldest Profession podcast. There were 2 women who were trying to fly home for Thanksgiving, and they were wearing short skirts. And so I think it was United Airlines that has invested over $1 million in training their employees on how to spot trafficking victims, held them and detained them for over 12 hours. So they missed dinner because they were convinced that they were trafficking victims. And you see this historically over and over and over again in countries that try to crack down on prostitution. It ends up just limiting the freedom of movement, freedom of expression, and like fashion choices of women generally, because they end up self-censoring so as not to be confused with whores who are being violently cracked down on and thrown in cages. We saw this with the Contagious Diseases Act in the 1860s in England. We saw the same thing happening during the American theater of World War I. We saw this in the prelude to the Third Reich in Weimar, Germany. We see this like over and over and over again of like states saying ostensibly they want to crack down on the victims of prostitution, and what they're really doing is cracking down on women being out in public or having opinions.
by the
It's
way,
crazy.
don't forget the 2 women who were mistakenly accused of being prostitutes. Do you happen to remember what ethnicity they were?
Asian, definitely Asian,
Yeah,
Yeah.
because
of stereotyping.
Because the stereotype that an Asian woman who's dressed this way must be a prostitute to whoever was working there. So
Yep,
we're
they are just coming back from vacay.
But there's also been cases where they have legitimately stopped kids from flying places that they would have been trafficked.
Has there?
Yeah, I don't know.
Where?
I'm not saying we should stop that either. I'm not saying we should
Why
stop
wasn't that on
trying
the
to stop
evening
that.
news?
Well, because it doesn't.
That's where I
Right.
saw it.
Okay.
I just
there's
think that
also cases-
it's really a hard, for me, it's a hard sell to say that making legitimate sex workers' lives more inconvenient is worth making children's lives safer.
But we're not talking about actually making children's lives safer. We're talking about the illusion of safety that comes with more rules and restrictions.
Yeah, if
and
that guy couldn't advertise on it in Backpage or whatever,
he'd have her at a street
then
corner.
he'd have
at
her in the
gunpoint.
back of a car, or just
like
drive her around handing her off to people. Like,
prostitution existed before the internet and will continue after it, but we're
You
not
sure?
talking about inconveniencing sex workers. We're talking about sex workers' lives at risk. We're talking about women being murdered. We're talking about more traffic. Like, this doesn't make the problem better. It makes the problem worse. So if you want to prevent people from being killed in sex work, you want to prevent children from being trafficked, it's about rising like adult sex workers so that they have the tools to keep themselves safe, not making it less safe for everyone for the veneer of cracking. Like, you don't get what you're aiming for with this bill, and what you do get is much, much worse.
It seems like the point of the bill is to use the child victims as an excuse to crack down on all of them, because prostitution is just something that, particularly if you're conservative, is just wrong on an intrinsic moral level in a way that a lot of other crimes aren't, because they're not like biblical kind of crimes.
We've seen prohibition go wrong before, and we keep having to relearn this lesson.
Yeah.
That just because you outlaw something doesn't make it go away.
But this isn't really a prohibition. This is already something that's illegal in most parts of our country. This is from reading the bill or reading about the bill, it seems like it's really just supposed to be targeting people that are trafficked and allowing them to make culpable the sites that allowed this to happen.
This is about criminal prosecution and not litigation. So, like, I mean, this opens
This
up
opens up litigation,
it opens up litigation,
which had been previously closed.
but
so
it
before,
also opens up criminal prosecution.
for people that are allegedly involved in the trafficking.
Yeah, except that the way that the government has defined trafficking is so broad that it ends up like including a bunch of adult sex workers.
I think there's a schism here. Of the question is, it sounds like there's two different, that both of you have a different idea of what the end result is going to be when an adult who's doing this of her own accord gets caught in this.
But we've already seen that.
Which is that they're not letting those ones go.
Yeah, they're definitely.
This is just
not a catch and release.
This is a net. This
Yeah.
is a net they're trying to get all sex workers in, right? And they're not, like, it's just sort of saying it's worth it to get all of them to get the kids too, which is a valid argument. But
Which,
that is,
I mean, it's already illegal. So, I mean, I don't really understand. Like, I don't think that it, like, no offense, but if there's like 5 kids that are going to be saved from this bill, and like thousands of sex workers are inconvenienced by it, I'm sorry, it was already illegal to begin with. But I think that if those 5 kids, if their parents can go back to a Backpage or go back to a Craigslist and say, something, you allowed this to happen to my child, and I'm going to hold you accountable for it to the fullest extent of the law, and they can, have a civil suit against them and try to protect another 5 kids, I'm totally fine with that.
Wait.
I mean, you could really just move to a place that it's legal.
well, here's a question. If you live in a community where, because of these laws, they've managed to shut down the online aspect of prostitution, and we go back to street walking, wouldn't that make it a lot harder for anyone to find a kidnapped and trafficked prostitute?
Yeah.
Isn't
will.
that? I mean, if you had a family member who was, the idea that it's that these ads are online seems like that would be incredibly helpful. I mean, I don't know if you saw that George C. Scott movie. I think it was called Hardcore.
No, I missed that one.
About a girl who gets kidnapped in camp and forced into prostitution, and then he finds her by going and basically watching every porno movie that existed at the time until he found the one she was in. That movie would have been 10 minutes. Now that guy could have just scrolled through every single ad much faster than the guy had to go from theater to
use
theater.
some facial recognition software.
A lot of tools at the disposal of the
I mean, look,
surveillance state
I
now.
get the argument because this is a half measure. My real belief is that prostitution, along with all crimes that would be considered prohibition, should be legal and regulated. Because every time I hear about a pimp killing a woman, I think if prostitution was legal and done in an antiseptic environment, there would be no pimps.
I don't know. I was a waitress, which is totally legal. I've had a bunch of abusive managers.
Well, I mean, I'm not saying you shouldn't have, been violent with them, but at least it was an option. But I guess that's what I'm saying is I think that all crimes that don't involve a complainant it doesn't make sense to be illegal because it's just how you end up with PCP and weed or children mixed into streetwalkers or I'm sorry, are there any other victimless crimes I'm not thinking of?
Tattooing.
Drugs.
Is what we used to crack down on. Yeah, drugs, drinking.
Well,
Sex.
things that are illegal right now that don't have someone to complain when the crime happens. That's why it's so hard to catch someone doing when two people are in on it, like a prostitution
Right.
or a drug deal.
Victimless
or-
crimes.
I guess in my head right now, I thought there'd be a third one.
It
But I
feels
guess
like
there's-
there should be
There
a third
probably
one.
is, but like I
Everything
mean,
happens in threes.
and I agree that like I think that prostitution should be legal, and I do think that it should be regulated and highly taxed. I think it should have like a luxury tax. The same as with drugs, but like at the same time, like I'm not against this bill, and I kind of feel like, like basically it's just making something that's illegal inconvenient. And I kind of feel the same way about this as I do about the whole like now people that are on opioids or they have a disease. Back in the 80s and the 90s in the inner cities, if you were on crack cocaine, you were a criminal. Now if you're on heroin and you live in the Midwest, now you have a disease. It's
Which
to
is
me,
good.
It's the same thing. It's like I think that it's really tilted on who they think or they're capturing, and so
There's things that I like and I don't like it's both at once scary, and I kind of like the idea of the retroactive going after sites for posting things, but in the concept of a parent who is like, now I'm going after your ass, and I kind of like that idea. But retroactive going after people before a bill was even passed into a law creeps me out because that just shouldn't happen. Like, you shouldn't be able to just go and say, now this law exists and I'm going to go after everybody.
Right, constitutionally it's supposed to be you cannot be prosecuted for a crime you committed before that was a crime.
Yeah.
Though,
So I'm at odds with it.
It gets weird.
But yeah.
Can I say something a little unpopular, possibly? I don't know if
Sure.
it will be. I don't believe that inconvenience should always be less important than lives. Because on some level, if you lowered all the speed limits, more people would live. And I don't think that would be worth it. I at some level, I'm like, if a certain number of people are late, I would accept an acceptable amount of death.
I mean, I kind of feel like the same way about like my tax money going to Narcan and like Arkansas.
What's your problem with Narcan?
I don't know.
Why
what
am I
Narcan is.
paying for people to like? Why is my tax money going to Narcan to save people that voted for Trump?
I don't know what Narcan is. Is that drugs?
Narcan is a very safe and cheap drug that's very easy to administer that can help people not die when they've overdosed.
So is it a
if
drug
you-
that gets people? Is it a drug to help people get off drugs?
No, it just
It's
if they
a drug
OD,
to
it
save
just it
people's
revives
lives.
them.
Yes. So if your heart stops because you did too much heroin and your heroin buddy recognizes the symptoms of that because they're around heroin a bunch, they can administer Narcan and you will live and not die.
And it's not necessarily inexpensive because there are a lot of municipalities that are going bankrupt because there's so many people that need Narcan. And to be honest with you, at that point, it's Darwinism. If you're
I was
in
just going to say, it
Arkansas-
kind of ruins the whole Darwin thing.
Yeah, if you're in Arkansas and you voted for Trump and you OD'd, bye. Like, I just feel that way.
Well, while I do agree,
I don't think we should be killing people based on their political preferences because that gets turned
They
around
kill
real fucking
themselves.
fast. No, but like Trump would definitely love to withhold medical care from
Isn't
anyone.
he doing that already?
yeah.
No, but from anyone on Medicaid that voted for Hillary, like
I'm
this is
sure
just
he's
a-
working on it.
Right, exactly. Like, do you not see the moral equivalency there?
No, I find that, again,
Or is it
going
just
back
straight
to
up team psychology?
I don't think we should be assuming that it's only Trump supporters dying of heroin overdoses. Though I
Well, it's
agree.
definitely
I
a lot
don't
of
know if
non-voters.
any of those. Yeah,
I
just gonna-
do
none
agree
of them
that-
voted probably.
I do agree that being on heroin probably made him more attractive to you, just because you
Reasonable.
had less, diminished. You have more of a diminished
I
capacity.
was kind of more speaking to the fact of the whole kind of thing with being inconvenienced not being greater than
I want to push back
saving
on this
lives.
inconvenience thing because like we are definitely talking about a future with more dead hookers instead of fewer if this bill gets passed because you are taking the knees out from all of the ways that adult sex workers
But I
are
mean, it's
trying
the
to
oldest
keep
profession.
themselves
We've always
safe.
had dead hookers. It's not like I don't think that the percentage of dead hookers is going to increase throughout the span of time. There's always been dead hookers. I mean, we just
Well,
got
there's also been always dead people, but there have actually been a lot of examples of societies that have not stigmatized sex work where you have fewer of them being murdered by police officers,
Well,
Johns, or managers.
Hookers are known for being at the vanguard of the defense against serial killers.
Yep.
Hookers are always the ones that serial killers go after for the exact reason that they have to work outside the law.
Like there was that woman in West Virginia that killed that serial killer that was regaled as a hero, and thank God she wasn't arrested.
Two wrongs don't make a right. Sorry, go on.
No, that's it.
They also leave a nice, like the serial killers who have to have like a moral thing behind their killing.
Right,
You know,
exactly.
they're saving the prostitutes for God, and they have a reason.
Yeah, prostitutes have two enemies historically: violent misogynists in the form of police officers and also violent clients and like people that seek to violently control them, whether it's pimps or johns or police, and do-gooders.
Yeah.
And this bill combines the worst impulses of both of them. It combines the Republican conservatives' instinct to punish hoary, slutty women for the dirty, filthy,
But aren't those the
God-fearing
enemies
sex.
of all women, though?
Yeah, and it also combines the liberal instinct to help a population of people they can't be bothered to understand. That's what this bill is, and it's going to do neither.
Right, but I feel like all women's enemies are typically your conservative male
Yeah,
and
your violent
and,
misogynist
and
do-gooders.
also your do-gooders. So I mean, again,
Both those kinds of people are usually afraid of me, so I don't.
They're also the
Too many
enemies of
encounters.
artists and intellectuals and comedians and like any fringe people, right? We should all be against this bill because it feels like chipping away at freedom of speech. It feels like chipping away at like what is allowed.
but
on,
what am
So
I
you're
not
talking
allowed
about, like,
to
the-
say because someone can't post an ad on Backpage?
Hey, I have this helpful FAQ blog. If you are a new sex worker, you should read my blog on.
But that's not
steps that-
something I'm not going to be able to say. Like I can
I
can
think-
still
I think
say
that-
whatever I want.
I don't
say.
like rape jokes, but I'm not comfortable with them being outlawed on the internet.
I think that we're talking about like a possible end game, like if websites are being held liable for other people's.
What else can they be held liable for?
then
I'm
they
hearing.
might bolster up their.
I'm hearing
their,
calls on the left to punish
their
racists.
censorship, yeah,
And I'm hearing
so-
calls on the right to punish people that think Trump is stupid. Like anyone can use this bill or can use this idea to hold.
But if you
platforms
can't
liable.
say all men are scum on Facebook, so now
There's an example of that.
Exactly. And I understand that as being censorship,
Mm-hmm.
but to me, like, okay, saying not being able to post a sex working ad and not being able to say all men are scum to me are not equal.
We're not
I
allowed
think they're
to say
false
all men are
equivalents.
scum on Facebook.
Yes, no
not.
one ever gets happiness from saying all men are scum.
Right. Yeah. So the Facebook as outlaw or has been kicking people off their private platform for saying all men are scum because it violates their policy, right? Their corporate policy.
Hate speech.
Hate
They're
speech,
trying
right?
to-
But they won't crack down on people doing violent, specific rape threats because that apparently is not a violation of their policy.
Are you
But
sure?
again,
Are you
I've
sure
been
that's
on a
not violation
crusade
of
against
policy?
against all
Wait.
white people.
Right.
posts.
Wait. Are we sure
lately,
it's not a violation of policy to threaten to rape someone on Facebook?
people are not
Are you
getting
100%
people
sure?
are not
protected.
getting kicked off.
Is that
I'm
real?
looking at screenshots
No, so like if
and the
you
reporting.
say that you're going to rape all women, that would be a violation of policy. But if you're going
That
to
would
say
be
that
I'm
you're,
gonna rape you.
I'm going to rape you, that's not because you're not a protected person.
Are you sure? Wait.
Yes.
So if someone saw that and reported it, they would
Yes.
say we are allowed. That's real.
Yes, that's
Yes.
a real
Yeah,
thing
no,
that
that's-
actually
Sure of
happened.
this?
I'm positive.
Yeah.
You can
Marcia
say I'm-
Yeah,
Bel-
Wait,
Belsky.
wait.
I'm in
not
agreement with this.
I am not on the side of being able to say that or anything. I'm just saying, like, we're 100% sure that you will not get suspended
no.
for 24 hours.
No, if
from
you say-
Facebook.
But if you said like rape, like all women should be raped, then I believe that you're going to be kicked off. But if you say specifically you're going to rape a specific woman, that particular woman is not a protected class.
Okay, let me. Okay,
That's interesting.
with all due respect, would it be a? Okay.
I'd send you the article, but I don't have it.
I kind of want to write that right now on one of your Facebooks just to see what happens.
Go
but
for
I don't
it.
want
Do it
people.
on yours.
I feel like it could come back to haunt me.
I don't think so.
I feel like someone
I
might see this in
consent
the
to
wrong
you
context.
threatening to rape me on Facebook.
Absolutely.
There. Now you're
Me too.
protected.
Go ahead.
I still feel like this isn't going to work out for me.
You know what? I don't know what to tell you, Dave. But I'm telling you that's like so the difference between a federal policy.
Could you threaten to rape me on Facebook right now? Would that work? Because I feel like that's going to hurt your career less.
I don't know, but sure.
We'll do
Let's
that.
find out. Yeah, we'll run an experiment
that on
after
the
the
break.
show.
Yeah, when we
That's-
have a break, then
all three
we'll
of you.
threaten
I want
to...
you all to threaten to rape me on Facebook right now, and I'm going to report it.
Sure.
And I want to see what happens. Okay. Oh, we just did? Oh, okay, great. All right. Oh, yeah,
Hashtag
Matt
me
too.
too.
All four of you. I want everyone here to.
I don't know that I'm agreeing to potentially rape Dave, but
No, I just want the
I'm,
threat.
I'm,
oh no! I'm sorry. I just want you to threaten to. I didn't mean
no.
to do it.
Yeah, no, I understand. I
We'll give
don't
you
know
a
that I'm
safe
doing
word,
that
Dave.
either.
That's
That is
fine.
that seems like such an oversight of their
No,
policy.
because their policy they have like a hierarchy of protected classes. So a specific individual is not a protected class. Just like you can say something like about a black child, but if you say something about all of something, then that is more protected than black child, black women, white women. Like you've got to say something about an entire group of people.
So if I said several men are scum, they'd let that fly.
Yeah. So
Maybe.
I worked. So I tried it that way. So I said test like I think all men are scum. Saying think, I didn't get kicked off. I also said I think all of the Facebook policy whatever people are scum. I didn't get kicked off for that. But if you say all men are scum, then you get kicked off because the people that work for Facebook aren't a protected class. Me thinking that all men are scum, it's like kind of because I like to play games with the censors, and so like that didn't get me kicked off. But like if you say all of something, that will get you kicked off. I can't remember what I
tried
said
that with
all
the,
of, and
the
I
art,
got
nudity and art thing.
right.
Because Leonard Nimoy did those photographs of the obese naked women.
Okay.
That's art.
Yep.
But I got suspended for a week.
You're not fat enough.
They were actually preemptively, like it was disappearing as I posted it.
Yeah.
Oh really?
Because
Yeah, I posted
the
it,
image
like,
the image had
They already
been
have
taken.
it on file. Like Leonard Nimoy's fat chicks not allowed on
Was
Facebook.
is it all nudity is not allowed?
I think that it's okay if it's in a painting, but these are photographs, so
Well, I mean if that's the policy, if you just can't post nudes, I get it. If
I mean,
that's-
I don't know. I posted nudes for
not
the
saying they
naked
shouldn't.
show.
Oh,
but-
while I was suspended.
On the other
David
side, you could be
posted
Twitter,
a-
and you could just happen to see people getting gaped on your
Yeah.
feed without expecting it. So there's definitely
While
a
I was
medium here.
suspended, my husband posted a picture that he took of one of our models, but she was black, so you couldn't like really tell that her nipples were showing because her
That's fair.
skin was all like the same color.
so
'Cause of the
the
lighting.
And it
algorithm
was
didn't
just they
catch
did
it.
not. Yeah, it was just
the
right
light-
up.
Speaking of
nude
racism
girl.
in
Silhouetted.
algorithms, did you guys hear about the new iPhone that can't tell different Asian faces apart?
Oh,
so like
no.
the facial
Recognition
recognition
doesn't
unlocked
work,
just
yeah.
works with Asian people. Like,
Oh no!
I thought that was fantastic.
Well, look, I mean, it's not. I'm not going to say that that's racist because we know who's making the phones. So I think it's a little presumptuous to say that they're going out of their way to. I mean, they're the ones making the phones.
Maybe
if anyone,
they really do look the same. No, sorry.
it means they agree. Obviously, you know what's funny? I keep getting reminded of this. Well, it's a movie about sex trafficking. It was one of those Death Wishes, one of the Charles Bronson movies. There was one about it was one about sex trafficking, and I remember just the most offensive part of the movie was so a white girl got touched on the subway by a Japanese man. It was like that 80s thing where like we were just obsessed with Japanese culture and trying to find ways to attack them. So there was a thing where like you know that old stereotype that like women on the subway in Japan won't stop a man from touching her because she's embarrassed. So it was an 80s thing. So
okay.
in the
I didn't even
movie,
know.
this young girl gets touched by a Japanese businessman who wants to see if it works on American women, and of course it doesn't, and she gets mad and goes to the police. And then she says to an Asian policeman, he goes, what happened? She looks a little nervous, and the Asian policeman, who looked nothing like the guy who touched her, Like not even this guy was bald and fat. The other guy was like young with hair in a suit. And the guy says, "It's okay. I know we all look alike."
Oh my God.
And I was like, who the
Some
Number
writer.
One, Charles
What director
freaking
had
Bronson
the
is
balls?
Asian. Charles Bronson is Asian.
Can
you
you
sell out?
Can you even imagine? Like, who would have the balls
To write that.
to write that, and then to ask at least the writer doesn't have to look that actor in the eye and say, "Now this is your line."
But if you saw how much these two Asian guys, it looks
Oh
like
my God.
it honestly looks like a 25-year-old Japanese guy and a 50-year-old Filipino, and he's just like. And he's like,
Was it maybe part of the joke?
I
Was it a
look in the no,
joke?
no, it was not.
It was totally serious.
It was I look in the mirror and I see Viet Cong. It was the guy.
Hilarious.
It was such an insulting. I mean, it was the '80s. What do you want to do?
Right.
But I mean, it just makes me think of that. And this was a movie all about sex trafficking, about a girl who got kidnapped and then killed herself because she. Which, you know, like I said, at least that movie had the decency for him to specifically go after the people trafficking kids.
Right.
Well, yeah, he's a good guy.
Oh, wait, can I just, one last thing about how offensive this movie was and how written by someone who was not Asian this movie had to be? In the movie, the Japanese guy who touched the girl, he's like one of the main characters.
Mm-hmm.
It was like him. It was sort of like his like evil side coming out, and then he went back to being a normal person. He has sex with his wife, and they're both from Japan.
Right.
So they're having, as you can see from the movie, traditional Japanese
Do they wear
sex.
kimonos
Oh my
and
God.
have like tea first?
You're,
what is this?
you're getting ahead of me.
Oh, okay, go on.
Not only were they wearing kimonos and dressing like, you know, like I would imagine for like a traditional
Karate
wedding or
Kid
something.
tea ceremony
The
thing?
way they had sex in this movie in the 80s about Japanese people living in America is that they have sex by getting, putting on like, this very ceremonial looking garb. And then the man,
Abused wives with geishas.
the woman lies down, the man got on top of her, and then they simply press against each other, like with him inside her. He presses against her as hard as he can with not one thrust. They simply hold hands and just grip each other and
So beautiful.
grind, press against each other like some sort of hydraulic press until he comes. Not one
Isometric
stroke.
sex.
So they invented this fucking fabricated, otherworldly sex that these people must be having.
Dave, that's just
I
science.
thought
Japanese
that's the
people,
sword and the chrysanthemum.
they have sex like birds
It was fucking crazy.
with their,
This movie, I gotta find out what movie this was now because
That was called the lotus flower.
We gotta watch
Apparently,
this.
you don't have sex with enough Japanese people.
that's funny.
I
right,
was like, and I was at an age when I saw this where I was, of course, going to assume this is accurate. I was like 9 years old.
You were going to disappoint a lot of Japanese girls.
Yeah, it's a good thing I didn't have sex for another 11 years because I could have made a big mistake.
Thank God you paid them.
All right, you guys, we're going to take a quick break, and we will be right back.
Welcome to Blamestorming. Blamestorming. In a post-truth world, there's plenty of blame to go around. 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 Join Dave Cyrus and Marissa Smith as they blamestorm about today's hot topics.
Hey guys, welcome back to Blamestorming. I'm still Marissa Smith. I've got Dave Cyrus with me.
Yes, she does.
I've got Heather Height with me.
Heather Height.
I'm still here.
And I've got Caitlin Bailey with me.
Present and accounted for.
So
we
good
are
news.
all here, you guys.
Oh, sorry. Good news, everybody. I found the name of the movie.
What is it?
It's called Kinjite, Forbidden Subjects. And it's Charles Bronson's movie from, by the way, 1989, which made me even more disappointed in this movie because this is long after they should have known
So
better.
it's like competing with Die Hard?
Yeah, this came out around the same time. Bronson plays a cop. I found apparently Nicole Eggert is in it. That poor girl. So she hasn't gone through enough. And there's a guy named Sam Chu.
So this is at the peak of Japan coming in and killing Detroit, basically.
Yeah.
This is when we were basically like,
Basically.
we need to figure out a way of hating these people because they're taking all our jobs. And everyone was just so terrified of Japanese-made electronics. Which, by the way, just goes to show the whole problem people have with like steel tariffs now is they think that it's so simple that you can just make more money when you tax something. They think of just like in the 80s, we were obsessed with this idea that the Japanese were selling us all these electronics, not acknowledging the fact that every time a ship came over filled with radios that they sold to us, we sent that ship back with all the stuff that we had that they needed, like
Yeah.
our fruits, vegetables, and tuna.
And the things to make the radios.
Yeah, exactly. By the way, they weren't even eating tuna. The Japanese did not eat tuna until we started selling it to them. That's how much people didn't understand the way trade was actually working back then. Like from World War II ending onward,
Wait, so how do they have sushi grade tuna then?
because they didn't eat sushi before World War II was almost exclusively small fish, which of course is the most environmental way to eat sushi
Yeah.
or eat fish at all. And we convinced them to start eating tuna, which up until then was considered too fatty
In our
and
defense,
oily.
it's delicious.
It
It
is
is
yummy.
really yummy.
It is.
But
It-
we're just
You know
backing
why?
up.
You know
I
why
feel
it's
like some
delicious?
spicy
Because
tuna roll right now.
it's delicious because we don't agree with them when they said, "Oh, it's way too fatty,"
thing you're
and we're
gonna
like,
tell
"That
me.
doesn't exist."
Too fatty.
Anyway,
Plus a tuna could feed an entire village.
I want all of our listener to listen to
so-
watch Kinjite.
No, please don't.
We have a question from our live feed. LF would like to know what are the possible long-term outcomes if the bill is not passed.
What sex workers are advocating for now is decriminalization. That's what they want is for to stop putting people in jail for consensual sex work. This bill is a step in the other direction where we can further criminalize sex work, where it won't just be a municipal what's it called? Like low level crime. What's the word I'm looking like when you get a
Misdemeanor?
speeding misdemeanor.
Misdemeanor.
Like like a speeding ticket. So right now in most municipalities, just straight consensual adult sex work is a misdemeanor, but they've been tacking on stuff like trafficking. If you like work with other people or ever use the internet, or if you tour yourself, then you can traffic yourself. If you are based in New York and travel to Boston one weekend,
Which is sort of a perversion of the intention of the law.
it's definitely a perversion of the intention of the law. So decriminalization solves a lot of that because
Plus,
it doesn't.
talk about the long term of that is
Yeah.
then the only thing that is illegal is underage
Yes.
trafficking
or
of
violent exploitation,
children
or
and-
lying
yeah.
to your employees,
So-
or like violating labor laws.
Right, but still, like legalizing it, it's still not going to stop children from being trafficked. But also going back to the bill, and I understand that there's a lot of speculation of where this will go once we kick the can down the road. But from what they're specifically saying right now is that this bill will close a loophole that trafficked people can now hold accountable the sites and the platforms that allowed them to be trafficked. So long term, if this bill does not get passed, sites like Backpage or
Backpage no longer exists.
well, I said
Sure.
like
Yeah,
back page, or a Craigslist or sites that are allowing these ads to be posted will never have to face any sort of criminal liability or civil liability for allowing these ads to be posted in the first place. And so families of trafficked people themselves will not be able to hold these platforms accountable. So long term, if that's not passed, you're not going to be able to sue these sites for saying that they allowed these children be trafficked on their websites.
Right. The other way is like if you have a website, like if you have a blog or you have something, you won't be held personally liable for what other people post on your site.
But wait, 20 years ago, people were getting prostitutes from the backs of magazines, right? Or
Right.
newspapers. Were they getting sued?
No.
Were there children there too? There had to be, right?
Absolutely.
Same percentage, I'm imagining.
Right.
I
Same
mean-
thing with street walking. Are we holding sidewalks accountable? Like, where does this go?
Well, I mean,
Or the places, the business that the sidewalks are in front of.
Right. Yeah, they should do a better job of keeping vagrants off their sidewalks.
Well,
I
I
mean,
mean,
because that could allow for child prostitution. So you've got to really crack down on your loitering laws. Yeah.
it's actually like casinos have prostitution.
Right.
problems,
Casinos actually
do. Casinos get do they get sued if someone?
Casinos really crack down on prostitution, and they also weirdly crack down on marijuana consumption because it's still a federal law, and they don't want to put their gaming license. Their gaming license is like the big thing. So because they're already doing this thing that comes with a lot of like crackdown.
So LF has a reply. Maybe there'd be more sex workers being hired if it was legal. That could be problematic for the image of America. Possible downsides of criminalizing.
So
One of the best countries in the world is Holland.
That's
right?
true.
Everybody loves Holland.
Yeah.
It's not like people think of Holland as a low-class country.
No.
England, it's legal, right?
Yeah.
It's
Same thing with New
regulated.
Zealand. New Zealand, it's decriminalized.
Yeah, and those are all countries that
Those
we
are like-
all respect more than
Those
ours.
are top three. Yeah.
I mean, right now we're respecting like anything. Papua New Guinea more than respect
Yeah, but
ourselves. But
Holland and England are
and
still.
they
What
still
is
eat
the
people
image of
there.
America
I feel
anyway?
like
Aren't we
prostitution and
horrible?
abortion are sort of like equivalents, and that like criminalizing abortion doesn't really reduce the amount of abortion. It just makes it
more
less
dangerous.
safe.
Yeah.
That's my argument with this bill, is that like cracking down on the ways that sex workers like find clients and keep themselves safe and stay in touch with each other and check in with each other might temporarily reduce the number of sex workers. It's going to make street walking way more visible. It's going to make like the vice like more public in a way.
Which the
Right.
difference is then it's actually
Now
then the
it's-
people who don't want it in
Now
there,
it's an image.
now you are
issue.
seeing it.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think we all agree it's bad. I mean, you saw the Deuce.
Yeah, no, people. Yeah,
Right.
people
Yeah.
walking around on the street in like that doesn't help property values anywhere.
Right.
You know? Like,
No.
But like in the
neighborhoods
Deuce,
want to crack down on it.
the Deuce is
Yeah.
all about when prostitution moved from Times Square on the street to like
Yep.
the massage parlors, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
And it's like, yeah, it doesn't fix the prostitution problem, but it was incremental. It meant
Helps
that,
moms feel safer.
but the whole point was that it meant, yeah, you weren't walking
Mm-hmm.
around the street seeing a movie and your kids seeing a hooker,
Right.
And it's and then it's harder to murder a hooker in a
massage
yeah,
parlor
yeah.
when she can call for help and you had to like go through a door person. Like this is basically going to reduce indoor sex work and increase outdoor sex work, with which all people, whether they're neighborhood watchmen or prostitutes themselves, don't want.
right,
Yeah.
but I think you're also kind of making the assumption that prostitutes aren't being killed that are doing indoor sex work. Like there's that whole Gilgo Beach serial killer that had basically hired all of those women online, and they found like a dozen or so bodies from them. And their last phone calls were like, "Oh yeah, no, I met this guy on Craigslist." So I don't. Again,
Were they hookers?
At the same
Yeah.
time,
Or
though,
were
if
they-
tobacco were illegal, there would be a body count of people killed over selling tobacco illegally.
Right.
Anything that
Oh,
people
so like
want.
Eric Gardner?
Same thing with prohibition. Yeah,
Well,
Eric Gardner is the. I mean,
I don't
yeah,
think
it's
that was
like when
really
you
about the
criminalize
cigarette.
something.
That wasn't really about. It wasn't really about the cigarette itself. That was. I think there
It was
was
about
more.
cracking down on marginalized people, and uppity, mouthy women have been that for a long time. You know, so like I think that this is a thin veil to crack down on like women's sexuality, which has been an obsession of civilizations for thousands and thousands of years now.
But I don't understand why a women's sexuality is based on sex work. Like you
Why
can
is sex work
still
criminalized if not for fear of women's sexuality?
Well, I think
that's more of a morality thing. I mean, it's not like male sex work is legal and female sex work is not. I mean, there's still male hustlers out there. It's not any less illegal than female sex workers.
But being a male
Yeah,
hustler
but
is a
men
much.
are allowed to show their nipples on Facebook.
but it's important to remember
the
that.
ones that are showing it, you don't want to see anyway.
Never.
But being a male hustler, being a male prostitute, it is a much smaller industry. There's a much smaller profit margin. Guys are expected to work more in a day. We have to, the amount of sorry.
It's one of the few places where women earn more than men.
Yes, so that is why we really need to do something about it.
It's really hard for you to make money.
So is
these
this
days,
because
isn't
of
it?
the wage gap
You have
between
no idea.
male and female prostitutes?
You
Is
have
that
no
what it
idea
is?
how much more I'm expected to work out as a male prostitute than a woman.
You have to be in much
Cry me
better
a river.
shape, right?
Well, there is an alt-right argument about porn where porn is the one industry where women make more money. And they're like, see, that means it's okay.
It is totally okay.
That's a good point.
Immoral according to whom exactly? Well, I'm talking about like basically Judeo-Christian ethics that's the reason why people.
You weren't
Mary
talking about your
Magdalene.
personal morals.
Heather's-
No,
Yeah.
I've already said that
That's
I
my
thought
husband.
that
Heather's
that-
husband just we should clue people in. Heather's husband just made the point on in a comment. The immoral according to whom? And because it's your husband, I'm going to give this a lot of weight. Because that means, because he speaks for both of you. So that,
Thanks.
but yeah, it is a good point that I think I see both your points because it's a roundabout thing. People who are saying I don't want prostitution, they're not actively saying because I don't want women to, enjoy their bodies.
Orgasms.
But but there is a
And make
correlation
money.
down the line of that people have a hatred of prostitution for the similar kind of reason they hate the idea that they find out that teenagers are having sex in cars, or
Right.
that people can get the. I think the same people who really
Yeah,
hate
but at the
prostitution
same
hate the
time,
HPV
like, there's-
vaccine.
I don't know, and I guess like feminism is hard, you guys, because like I understand,
I know.
like you know what I mean. So like I understand like that sex workers are a marginalized group. I completely understand that. At the same time, it's like, well, something like I'd like to be able to walk down the street without being profiled. That's illegal for them to do that, but it still happens to me.
Sure.
Why do I care that it's inconvenient for you to get a John? Like, you know what I mean? It's just like it's not my own personal issue. And so it's kind of like, going back into identity politics.
Well,
It's
that's
just
what
like,
people in power want, though. They want for you to say that it's a choice between like a veteran having a job and a homeless person having food stamps, or that it's a choice between you being profiled and a prostitute being arrested. That's sort of that's a divide and conquer argument.
Right.
That the idea that if one group gets advocacy, it's taken from another. And
it's like one of those things where I don't see it as being detrimental to my sexuality as a woman. I don't see that argument. I also don't see the argument of putting a child's safety before. I don't see that either. So Dave is saying all of which boils down to the same goofy Judeo-Christian Islamic mindset
Right.
that women are property.
And that's that's a valid point. Not everyone who's against prostitution thinks of it that way, but that is a cornerstone of this argument that we need to legislate sex.
Well,
right?
I've already said that I think that sex work should be legal and that it should be highly taxed. But for me, it's not so much like, I think that people are going to do it much like doing drugs or alcohol or whatever, and like any sort of luxury, there should be a high tax on it. That's just my feeling, and you can use.
But you're
that.
imagining this tax being paid by Johns or by clients that you're imagining being like wealthy, and I think that it's important to remember that when you talk about like heavily taxing this industry, you're talking about heavily taxing like a population of people that might be doing survival sex work that might it's the providers that are going to be paying that.
Well, I think it should be both. I think that
Should charge it like a sales tax.
exactly. I think
Yeah.
that it should be like a sales tax, like if you're going to a spa or something like that.
we can-
and then also an income tax because, like, you know, if you're filling out your, you know, your W-9s.
Oh,
or
if I'm
Sure.
I think prostitution should be like being a writer. You know, I write everything off.
Freelance.
That you shouldn't
Yeah.
be paid for it?
I'm that I shouldn't that I
Because
should
no
be
one
able
gets
to
paid
write.
to write.
Right.
Oh yeah, well that's
That's
why
funny.
I make more money in my tax return than I do all year long because
Right.
I write everything off because I
Yeah,
file
there
as
you
a
go.
writer.
I
So-
well, like
I wanna
Brazilian
see-
wax is sure.
I want to see a future where adults are allowed to have the kinds of sex they want for reasons that they want. Like, and I don't think that people should be going to jail for the kinds of sex that they're having or the reasons that they're having that sex.
I think that the rather than thinking of it as something that would like, well, I would like people to not profile me when I walk down the street. I feel like the idea of us being grown up enough as a country to not imprison people for sex would kind of embrace the idea of not assuming somebody is a certain thing because they're black or white or whatever, you know?
But
Like,
I
I
think
think it
that
all
people
kind of
still go to
is
jail
the
for
same-
weed, and
Yeah.
so like
I
you
know,
know,
but
it's
we're-
so.
it's-
But hope we are getting
I feel like all of
closer
that
to the
is
point where that's
kind
over.
of
We
part
are-
Then
of
what
that.
happens to all the people that were in jail for weed? So
Oh.
what happens to them?
They gotta get
they would be commuted.
Actually,
They would
they
have
would
sentences
they would
commuted.
they would let
But
them out the weed thing.
there
That's not
are
what's
that's
happening.
not what's
They're
happening.
supposed to be, yeah, but yeah,
They're
you're
not
right.
Yeah,
doing that.
because the criminal justice system is another example of the stated purpose and the actual purpose being radically different, right?
Yeah.
So the stated purpose is that we're going to get dangerous people off the street, right? So the SESTA bill is we're gonna help save children that would otherwise be trafficked into sex slavery, and we're going to prevent that from happening with this bill, right? Just like the criminal justice system is like we're gonna get the bad guys off the street. But in actuality, the line between good and bad and like putting people in cages with violence doesn't make things fucking better. And you have entire populations that are living in a police state right now because of our wrong thinking about this issue. So I think this is another, like, the stated intentions might be good unless you think about it and then you talk about the actual implications of this law, and it's going to make life less safe for adult sex workers. It's not going to prevent child trafficking, and it feels like the beginnings of making the internet.
But we
not-
also don't know that it's not going to prevent child trafficking. We
How is it
haven't
going to
tr-
prevent child
We
trafficking?
haven't tried it yet, so
Well,
we
can I-
don't
But we've tried
necessarily
stuff
know
like this
that it
before.
has. Like
This
we don't at this particular moment in time. We have not done this yet. This bill has not been passed yet, so we don't know if it will incrementally or at all
I don't
change
even know
anything.
that it's possible to prevent crime on the whole. You know, things
Specifically, crime without a complainant.
yeah,
Like theft is a pretty easy thing for the government to deal with. We don't have a major theft problem in the country because every time someone gets robbed, there's
They
someone
report
going to the
it.
police and saying, "Please help me with this."
Unless
this is-
they're
very
unless they're an
clearly-
undocumented immigrant or
Right, but this is
otherwise.
like a missing child that probably,
a really good way to find them would be to go to those ads.
Right.
what do you think, like, so
but like
we've got
why?
runaways?
So now, like, why is it that prostitution is illegal but pornography is legal?
That's a really
Right?
good
Isn't that
question.
a great question?
Why
as long
is
as you
it
have a camera,
why is it
you
illegal
can
to
totally
sell
get
something you
paid
can
to
give away
fuck.
for free?
Yeah.
Because you're not having sex for money. You're getting filmed
Which
for
makes
money.
me feel ew
Is
and
the-
gross and yucky feelings, and I don't like it. So let's crack down on it and put people in jail. The other thing that I'll say about trafficking victims is like a lot of the rescue industry and a lot of this, like, we're gonna help trafficking victims starts with arresting them and putting them in a cage, which
Right.
like isn't the best move for helping victims
Because then
of
they're
trauma.
afraid to go for help.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, like for example, there was that woman, Yang Sung, who was working in a massage parlor. She was 39 years old. She was an immigrant from China, and she her massage parlor got raided by the NYPD in Flushing, Queens, and then she was raped by the police officer. And the reason that we know that is because she told her immigration attorney and her mother about it. And then they tried to get her to be an informant, but she wouldn't do it. So they raided her massage parlor again 2 weeks later, and she leapt from a 4-story building in order to get away from the NYPD because the last time she didn't run away from them, she got violently raped. So like these are not social workers, right? The police are not caregivers. They're not great with people in trauma. So like to make them the front lines for this war against supposed exploitation or this war against violence, it's just not a good move. Like telling the police are not great at not traumatizing people.
It's just like people who pedophiles wouldn't really be apt to go for help in counseling, or maybe not even admit it, because there's no help for a pedophile. There's just, oh, you're a fucking pedophile. Now you're a criminal. I'm going to put you on a list, and you're going to be, like the moment that you
they can't be rehabilitated.
I think that they can't be rehabilitated, but there are support groups run by pedophiles who don't act on their feelings.
Depo-Provera has been shown to be effective.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
They can white knuckle it. I'm just saying, if you are a pedophile who managed to not hurt anyone, I feel like you should be treated a lot better than
with more
you
but
should
I
be treated
understand
like
why you wouldn't want to come out.
The one.
it means you were probably abused yourself and you chose not to continue.
I saw a
doing
documentary
it.
and
feel
there
bad
was
for
an
that.
interview with a man who ran a support group online for pedophiles who do not act on their feelings, and he looked like a pedophile. It was crazy,
Right.
Because he was.
It must be like some kind of
Straight out of Central Casting.
like I don't want to.
Just
I don't want to
sweaty and
like
uncomfortable.
But no, he really
I
did.
would
He
totally
looked like
shame
a
the fuck out of a
1970s.
pedophile. I don't care.
Like,
Trust me, I know people who look more like a pedophile than he did. Without doing it, because I mean, I'm a comic and I know a lot of guys who you would never leave alone with anyone. But I just wanted to say,
With anyone.
have you guys seen that MSNBC documentary series about trafficking? The reason I don't trust this bill is because it just makes me think so much of that series. Because me and my ex-girlfriend would watch it all the time because it was always the same problem with the show. Every time the investigators would say, "We're gonna go rescue women from trafficking," and every time they would arrest a woman, and the woman would say, "I got 2 kids at home. I need to do this to save them. I need to help them."
I'm choosing to do this because it's the best out of some bad options.
And every single episode, the investigator would say, "Okay, this time they won't traffic, but we're gonna keep. We're still gonna make her go to jail.
If they find
but next
one-
time." And then they had a woman. And then the one we saw that like really blew our minds was they found this like 4'10" woman who. I would have guessed is
Adult.
maybe 50.
Right.
And they blurred her face.
but
because
you
they
can see
said,
her old neck.
yeah, and they would say, "Well, she's clearly a child. We finally found the child being trafficked."
physically
And then they get to the point and they arrest her and they say, "All right, we're going to check her ID. All right, we're about to check her ID and credits." And they didn't have to blur her face. They blurred her. They said we're blurring her face because she might be a child. But when they found out she wasn't a child, they did not unblur her face because that's bad TV.
yeah.
I swear to God, so again, I would have more faith in our lawmakers' good intent on this bill if we didn't have so many stories of this concept of trafficking being stretched to its absolute limit in order to punish adult people for having consensual sex with each other.
I mean, I understand what you're saying, and I don't think that our justice system in any way, shape, or form is working on any level. But at the same time, I feel like these are the ebbs and flows of our society, and these are the ebbs and flows of our law. And when in the 80s and the 90s, when you had just super predators, you went and you rounded up people that were probably nonviolent, had their lives ruined, went to jail until society started trying to revisit everything. This is your turn.
That was also a time of much higher
but this isn't
crime.
the first time in history that prostitutes have been scapegoated. We have so many examples of that, and we already know how this book
This
ends.
is not the first time in history that people of color, women, anyone has been
Satanists.
scapegoated.
Right.
Like,
So,
you
like,
know,
why-
so
so-
you know, it's again, this is the ebbs and flow of society. Like everyone kind of goes through their time, and this
I
is
just would
just
rather
that
have
time.
you just reminded me of all the people who were put during the Satanic Panic in prison for like ritual abuse who didn't do
Never
it.
did it.
Right.
And
it was a
are
panic,
now
a
getting
made-up-
out of prison.
Yeah,
I would rather just skip that whole throwing them in prison part.
We did it
and-
to Satanists. Now we're doing it to juggalos.
Well, not even Satanists, the juggalos.
we are. We are
You did it to
demonizing
people who-
juggalos
The
for
juggalos
no
were
did
reason.
that
not
to themselves by
Satanists.
coming out against Trump.
And
I mean, I'm not defending being a juggalo, but they
I'll
don't
do
deserve
that.
to go to
Are we-
jail.
Are we throwing juggalos in jail?
Yes! The
I didn't know
juggalos are a
that.
gang now. People getting their kids
Oh,
taken away for
that's
being
right.
juggalos
They do
because
kinda
they
act
thought that it's
like-
a freaking gang when they're
Wow,
really just a bunch of
Juggalo,
lonely people in
MS-13.
makeup.
They're just part of a
Same diff.
family, man. Don't they understand?
It's family.
Performance
It is
art.
family.
It's a
They're just
family.
people yelling, "Show us your butthole," and they're being thrown in with MS-13ers. Who,
Yeah,
by the way,
they're not gonna-
there's like 14 MS-13 members.
13,
So
14.
yeah, there's like the number of MS-13 members compared to like the Crips is infinitesimal, but it just
they must have done
It's
some-
the fact that they're El Salvadorian that Trump was like, oh, this will really scare the shit out of them. People are
Right,
used to
because he
Bloods.
can deport them.
Yeah, because people are used to Bloods, but
Well, now the
ooh, a
Bloods
gang member that are also
they've
illegal
grown up.
aliens.
They wear suits now.
But
you
like
know?
they had the Latin Kings before, and they were also
A lot of them were born here. That's the problem. The Latin Kings, some of them are second generation. No, that's why they're not as attractive enough as an enemy because Trump wanted a 2-in-1. He wanted
Right.
illegal aliens who are also
Right,
gang
it's like
members.
the reason we made that marijuana illegal, the reason that we made acid illegal. It's like all about targeting other populations.
Yeah. Alcohol was illegal because we were sick of the Irish and Italians enjoying themselves too much.
Right.
Then the jazz men came in, and the Mexicans and the blacks were smoking weed, so we had to
Right.
get rid of that too. And now,
And it's also about repressing social movements.
yeah, I mean, could you imagine what the Juggalos would be dealing with if they were mostly black people? I mean,
I can't
we treat them like
even,
that, and they're
like-
white. My God.
Yeah, but just barely.
Yeah.
You
well,
know.
oh, yes. On certain levels, yes, Juggalos barely count as white people because on the intangible level, what it means to be white in terms of having money and power and
They don't have any
stability,
of that.
they don't have that.
None of that.
But that's why they're a
When they meet
family.
in fields?
That's why they need family. That's why they're actually
I'm
very
gonna
nice
make
people.
a confession, you guys. I did date one in college.
They're
I
nice
did.
people.
Did he make you come real hard?
No.
Then fuck that guy.
Yeah.
Or don't.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
You know what? People think but the thing about Juggalos, it's honestly, it's the same people who in the 90s were just going to become, just sort of over the top punks. It's just usually people who just didn't have a lot of popularity and they wanted to just have their own community. Punks, scary punks, were the nicest people I ever met in high school.
Oh, I have.
They
course.
they're always the least aggressive people. We just have this image of them.
Right.
And Juggalos are actually in their defense, a lot of them don't like the Insane Clown Posse.
Reasonable.
Those are what I call the good Juggalos.
But that happens so often. I think it's like this is what discrimination looks like, is that we allow the story that we tell ourselves about something to get in the way of what it actually is. Right? And so we've told ourselves this story about what sex trafficking looks like, and we've completely missed what sex trafficking actually looks like.
Right,
It looks
because
like
you are a
economic
child.
necessity.
Well,
You
I
are
think
a
also
child
there's
prostitute.
Yeah.
You
There's
are
a-
Technically.
you
There's
are
a problem with increasing the gray area of things rather than narrowing things down, too. You know.
Right, especially when you have language in the SESTA bill cracking down on promoting prostitution. Like, what does that mean? Does that mean that my podcast is illegal now? Because, I don't talk about it as a pejorative?
Well, someone would have to listen to it and report it first.
Fuck you.
I didn't even catch on to
An
that.
audience of one. Call the police. These whores are mouthy.
These horses are mouthy.
Is that what you call your what's your podcast called?
The oldest profession
It should-
podcast.
It should really be Mouthy
The
Horse.
mouthy whores.
Mouthy horse would be a great.
You would have
podcast.
so many more iTunes.
You don't know our numbers.
We
have more than 4 listeners.
I can estimate that you would have a lot more votes on.
Mouthy whores.
You'd have more reviews at the very least for Mouthy Horse. I kind of want to call this that now.
Mouthy horrors.
I mean, I was never really married to
I don't think
Blamestorming.
Marissa's happy with that.
Do you know how much work I did on the art? Fuck you, Dave.
Yes.
Sounds like
It's
you're doing all the
brainstorming.
work and giving this white dude credit.
That's
That
the deal we
seems-
have.
Jesus.
That is the deal. I show up and
I
talk.
don't think Marissa's given him anything. She hasn't given him credit, nor has she taken authority through his permission.
No, I kind of do my own thing, and I send him, hey, this is what I did. Yeah, I still think that we still haven't really covered the why of why is it that you have sex on camera and that's legal, but prostitution is not.
I don't.
It's
You
a
know, I
legal
just hope it
argument.
stays that way.
Speech.
The legal argument is that it's 2 actors, right? So because both performers are being paid and they're both actors. So if
Okay.
you have whereas if one person is paying another professional, you only have one professional in the room, kind of thing.
But if you were to record your session and then just give him half the money as the cops walked in, then it's a porn.
right.
Technically,
Well,
yeah.
it doesn't even have to be that. It could be the guy having sex could also be the producer and paying only the woman, and that's still technically just porn as long as he's recording it and there's a
I
contract.
don't even think that legally the camera has to be on.
I think it does.
Does it?
I think legally there's other stuff. There's gotta be. I don't know the specifics of it, but I
Yeah.
mean, like,
You have
in
to
the way
have
that
certain license.
Yeah.
Certain.
We don't have a
contracts.
license
Certain
to-
contracts. I meant.
Yeah,
You
like
would
the
have-
paperwork. As long as you sign the
Sign the paperwork.
paperwork beforehand, then I guess
could you imagine
So
that
it
is
just
like
seems like you just need a legal Zoom for prostitutes to just be like, oh, cops are coming now. This is
Yeah,
this
as
is
long
a
as you-
porno.
But of course, as we know from like all marginalized populations, like what the law says and what the cops do are two very different things.
yeah.
Yeah.
Most of our porn doesn't have sex in it.
I'm
anyway,
more
so-
worried. This is the kind of bill that's not going to result in like more police raiding. Like that's not the big fear. The big fear is that it has a chilling effect on platforms and that sex workers aren't able to connect with each other and keep each other safe, or connect or
Well,
communicate
it's the
in
oldest
any way.
profession. I'm sure there'll be some sort of underground railroad of
It
prostitution.
can't be the oldest one. There's
No,
gotta be.
hunting predates us as a species.
I'm
but
sure
yeah,
people were
Gathering, maybe.
maybe, maybe.
collecting sticks. Maybe. I mean. Well, technically, though, she's right. It is the oldest profession because it probably predates humans.
It does predate humans.
Because like monkeys will like
Penguins
trade,
also.
will trade like food for sex.
Yep, absolutely.
There was a
Did you say penguins? Also?
Penguins, yeah, penguins.
yeah. That's been observed. Yes.
Yeah, there's a cool female penguin behavior where if like their mate takes too long because they might like be dead in the water because the wild is hard.
Yeah.
They'll like flirt with neighboring male penguins to get nesting stones, and if their mate shows up, then they'll pretend that wasn't happening.
Oh.
And if their mate doesn't show up, then they will sometimes steal a male from a neighboring nest. And then my favorite is like you've got prostitute penguins, and then you also have stripper penguins, right? So you've got penguins that will let a male copulate with them by giving them a stone, and sometimes you have penguins just doing like teasing dances,
to
and they'll
get
get the
stones?
stone, and then they'll be like, "Fuck you!" I mean, like it's great. It's like it's a pretty broad spectrum of like female coping
That's
mechanisms.
really interesting.
Yeah.
I never knew that.
Just more behavior that Republicans want to stop penguins from engaging in.
Yeah.
Remember how mad? I mean, they were so mad when we
They're
found the
gonna
gay
pull
penguin.
down
gay
all those
penguins.
penguin sites.
Well, I mean, because Republicans need to believe that homosexuality doesn't exist in animals, even though it's in every goddamn animal.
Yep.
Just because it, violates their whole belief system
Just
that
gives
it's.
them tingles in a
unnatural.
weird place. They
Yeah.
just can't admit to it.
I don't like it.
It's like, oh, why'd this man make my penis hard?
Well, I don't know if you know this. When the gay penguins in the in the zoo in Central Park, one of them went back to women, and Republicans were so happy about this.
Why? There's just so
Wait, did Pence put 'em in a
involved
camp?
Like they,
ins and outs of penguin
yeah,
relationships.
they were very involved in this relationship.
As
I mean,
the
it was
penguin
like
turns.
they really thought that the penguin that went back to women was then going to start proselytizing to the gay penguins about how he was converted.
Really?
I mean, that's how they acted. I don't think they really.
Give him a little penguin Bible.
That if they had their way, yes, that's exactly what they would have done.
little penguin
They would
white
make
shirt. With
they
a
would
little
make the gay
penguin pencil
penguins
protector,
watch straight penguin sex.
little penguin bicycle.
So, Heather, are there any like laws coming down the pike that are going to restrict pornography more?
The things that restrict pornography don't really affect our job because we don't do a lot of sex or fluid exchange.
Oh,
Okay.
I thought you were like, because we don't do laws.
we don't do legal. No. But like in California, they have the condom law.
Right.
We're not in California, so
Right.
But I think that they were thinking of having it be like if your porn does not depict a condom in the video, it is illegal.
Okay.
But then it would be illegal to distribute in California. Kind of like the California, all children's clothing has to have fire retardant on it because of California.
right.
They
have a lot of laws with like you can't have certain metals and
it'll trickle into the rest of the country eventually. So that would be an issue as we grow as a production company.
Right.
Right. We started out with the fetish because that was what I was willing to do.
Right.
and we needed to start somewhere. Like, I'll model for free. I'm willing to beat people on film for you.
Great.
Right.
Maybe talk about my feet, whatever, but I'm not, I'm in my 40s. I'm not going to,
Right.
But now as he's expanding out, like this is basically his baby, he's going to definitely want to have like real sex,
Right.
like
Right.
real porn.
Just no literal
And-
babies, because that's still definitely illegal.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, no
okay.
real babies.
Sure,
No,
got it, yeah.
baby is in project.
Got it.
Yeah.
No, I understand.
Thank you for clarifying.
You're
that, because we
welcome.
wouldn't want to have that kind of,
Yeah,
you know.
you could be arrested for child porn just for
confusion.
using
Yeah,
the word
just-
baby in relation to
No!
porn. You
I
know,
can,
Oh,
hear,
no,
I
they-
can feel my husband now.
That's something that happens a lot. When it comes to child porn, a lot of times the government is willing to pretend to be defending children when what they really want to do is just censor people in general for sex. There was a very big case years ago, the Comic Book Legal Defense Fund. The biggest case they ever had in terms of censorship of comic books was a horror comic that was only allowed to be sold to adults, that had, in one instance, it had a demon who was giving birth to a giant egg, and the egg hatched little new demons, adult demons, and that demon who hatched out of that egg then raped a man in hell. Okay? Do you know why that man went to jail for drawing that?
Because it was
baby
technically a
demon?
baby demon?
Because even though it was a full grown because even though the demon looked like a full grown adult, it did just hatch out of an egg that a bigger demon just gave birth to, making it, according to that courtroom, a baby.
did you guys
So
know
it's
that?
like
that
when
is
Ridley gets all
demon
intimate with the
pedophile.
Ridley alien thing.
And that guy went to jail.
Speaking
for
of
drawing that.
promoting child sex, Romeo and Juliet is a fucking travesty
really a hot
of a
movie, though.
13-year-old
I mean, it's not
and a
hot.
17-year-old
It was
getting
hot when
down.
when I was a kid.
Yeah,
How sexy was that when you were in high school and they showed it in class?
so hot.
Right?
But it's
Yeah, I was
like,
bored to death, but go on.
but it's
Side
crazy.
boob.
We're cracking down on comic books. We're cracking down on words on page.
But
I mean,
that's
like
art.
exactly. Exactly.
Well, what is art? Now we're gonna start a whole nother thing.
Sometimes people would just use an excuse to just attack what they don't like. I mean, remember what Giuliani did to museums 20 years ago?
Jesus.
When Giuliani, because a black woman was nude and portraying Jesus, that was considered obscenity. I mean, and he had a panel of people to decide what was obscenity. Not one of them had ever created art before.
Right.
We are so used to people exploiting one group to attack another.
Yep.
And that's what it feels like this is. This feels like it's about stopping prostitution by using the excuse that it's children, or the excuse that it's against
This
their
excuse
will.
that there may be a child.
And you know
involved.
what? If you were only going after those people, I would
But
I would support it. But it doesn't look like that's what this is.
I don't think that they're saying that they're stopping prostitution in this bill. Like, prostitution's already illegal. Like, I just don't. I
So
understand
is
what you're
child
saying.
prostitution.
Right, but that's what they're trying to prevent. What
This-
they're saying is
yeah.
that they're trying to prevent the trafficking of children.
I don't see anything in this bill that I would imagine would prevent. This all seems like revenge. The ability to take revenge has been increased.
On sites that had the audacity to allow sex workers to communicate with each other on it.
So I think that
Don't forget Backpage. The way I remember that story was legally, the legal reason they were able to shut down Backpage is because Backpage was asking for proof that the women weren't children, and they said, well, that means you know that they're prostitutes, because why else would you care that they're underage?
Yep.
It was such a
It's sort of like the
cynical
condom
test.
law. So there are a lot of, there are still people that are doing street-based sex work here in New York, and they are still being, if they carry condoms on them, that is still being used as evidence against them in a court of law. So they're actually disincentivizing sex workers from carrying condoms on them by
this is
cracking
like
down-
contraband.
Yeah,
Because it's proving what your intention is.
right. Yeah.
It's intent, yeah.
I had no idea about that. I feel like that's something I should have known.
And it seems like the kind of thing that the people who make those laws kind of grin and clink their glasses to, of like,
Right.
haha, this'll get them.
So you say things like there've always been dead hookers, but it's like, no, our feelings about prostitutes, like the fact that the way that we crack down on them and the way that we like disincentivize them from being able to take care of their own personal safety are the result of choices that we've made as a society. There's nothing inevitable about the violence of sex work. That's a choice that we make, and it's a dumb one.
You know, the Roman Emperor Elagabalus
Oh God.
was a
Do
prostitute.
tell.
Elagabalus was a Roman emperor. You know Elagabalus. He was.
Who doesn't?
We
I
had
think he
lunch
was,
last week.
I think he died at like 21. Could have been murder, but he was a gay prostitute who would go as king, would go to the red light district or whatever of Rome
to make
and
bank.
turn tricks because he just wanted, it's just what he wanted to do. He was thrilled by the idea. And actually, he was what we consider now maybe the first trans world leader because he offered a bunch of doctors in Rome money, all the king's riches, to give him a sex change.
Yep.
I'm not even sure I should be using him, but I mean,
I do not
technically
know
he's never
about
been
this
he's
person.
never
Gay is
identified.
safer, but yeah.
Fascinating.
But yeah, Elagabalus was
We've had many leaders that have had either current or a history of sex work. Empress Wu is an example of that. Empress Theodora is an example of that.
yeah, but those were women.
Elvita.
So
yeah, no. You're Elvita. No, never mind.
Evita.
Yeah, Evita. Elvita. I'm like
Elvita.
Elvira. What's happening?
Velveeta.
Yeah, no. Your example's cooler. It's edgier.
I
Yeah.
love that example.
And you know what? They killed Elagabalus, which is too bad because maybe he could have made the. Now, to be fair, he was probably really crazy in other ways.
Right.
That I'm sure there were other criticisms, but that's what he was most famous for: is turning tricks to sailors as the. I mean, let me just say, let's say you're a sailor, you're coming to a
There's
port,
some royal booty.
and the king is that's the kind of story that they're just not going to believe back home, isn't
Right.
it?
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean,
I fucked the king.
yeah.
It's better than hanging out with Bill Murray, really. As a
And they're
story goes.
and they're also gonna be
Definitely.
like, well, if you fucked the king, it couldn't have been that cheap. Like it wasn't about the money to him.
But I
Right.
mean, even historically, though, like Jack the Ripper also killed prostitutes in London, where London now prostitution is legal again.
Yeah, but at the time they were cracking down on sex workers.
That's true. If it was
But
legal back
it's-
then, he probably would have settled for like chambermaids.
He still would have probably still killed prostitutes. I mean,
Probably would have
they-
killed fewer of them.
or if he wasn't a royal, he probably would not have gotten away with it. But being that he probably was a royal, he would have probably still killed as many as he had, if not more.
Or he
Depending.
could have just killed
But
any
I
homeless
think that-
person or,
I think that women in general across the span of time have been victims of misogynistic
Male violence, absolutely.
male violence, and as a subculture, sex workers have been more prone to that. But I don't think that you can say that taking a website away is going to make them more prone to that when they were just as prone to that before these websites existed, and they probably would be just as prone to that after these websites exist. It's kind of like, to me, like you're
Well, if it's
saying
gonna
that
have no impact.
well,
then why
I
are we
think that
passing
it's
this law?
kind of like if you were to say that now that we have Black Lives Matter, that less people are getting killed by cops because more people are aware of the fact that cops are killing black people. It's like, oh, well, now that we're aware that these websites that are protecting prostitutes are taken away, that now less prostitutes are going to be murdered.
Well, there's a difference in
It's-
that it's a physical change. It's that we're going from hotels to the street, or vice versa. So that
But
there
they're
is-
still street prostitutes, though. It's not like they're
there
like
would be a lot more if it wasn't for Craigslist or whatever. If it
Yeah, I
before there was
know,
the
like-
internet, more women were on the street.
I know,
But
like
they're still,
street level
like-
prostitutes that get a hotel room and stay in that room the whole time, and they're on their internet, and then they order Johns basically, and just make appointments, and they never have to leave that room.
And they're
it's
still
so much safer.
indoor prostitutes that are still being murdered as
Mm-hmm.
well. So I mean, it's
But they wouldn't-
statistically it's something that's going to happen.
Those women, though, but that's what the Deuce was about. The idea that once you if they were in like a doctor's office, if it was that kind of regulation, it would be. I think those serial killers would start being like, I got to start thinking of someone besides hookers to kill. And they would start killing homeless people, and that would be a giant win. I think we all
in
agree.
in the same way that undocumented immigrants are targeted for robberies, right? Because that they're not going to report. They're not going to report to the police. I mean, like, absolutely, marginalized people are more prone to violence, but like that's a choice that we get to make. And when we're hearing over and over again that this bill is intended to keep children safe, and the population that it's targeting is being very loud right now, like on Twitter. If you go to their websites, like Tits and Sass, like I can't think of a single sex worker organization that is like, thank God we're finally cracking down on like you ought to listen to the population of people that this
But
legislation
the
is going to
population
impact.
is really supposed to be helping trafficked people. That's what.
Yes.
That's so.
And
we
most
don't know
anti-trafficking
where
organizations-
these trafficked people are because they are trafficked. So they really can't be the ones talking to us. This is really a population of people being inconvenienced by this, not the actual population
sex worker
that are
project at the-
supposed to be
the
helped by
the sex
it.
worker project of the Urban Justice Center, right? SOAR, Amnesty International, like these are all organizations that help trafficked victims that are against this bill, that they work with people who have been trafficked and addressing their needs and getting them help. And they're saying that this bill is going to impact the population that they serve negatively. And those are trafficked victims. Those are people that have been brought from other countries and lied to, people who've been deeply exploited, people who've been coerced into sex work. And like, and even Amnesty International is against this bill. The ACLU is against this bill.
What is Children of the Night saying about it? Are they
Who are they again?
Children of the Night? They're an advocacy group in LA.
Is that like they help
they-
runaways?
Yeah, they're mostly specifically about keeping children out of prostitution, but the way they do it is by providing housing for runaways.
Right, yeah. So like the best anti-trafficking bills
Right.
are about giving resources to people that need them, right? It's about taking away economic coercion. So like most of the anti-trafficking arguments that I hear are really anti-exploitation under capitalism arguments, which makes all of the sense to me, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't believe that anyone should be doing something that they don't want to be doing. in
More
order to
laws
live.
just make more things illegal and make more criminals.
Right.
Actually, I just checked it. Children of the Night is against the bill.
Yeah.
and they are the of the groups that I've had experience learning about. They're the one that seem to be the ones that are the most respectable. They're the ones
What
who
do
basically
they say this bill is going to do? Because
I
they're
mean-
going to be experts on trafficking, whereas I'm just an expert on my life,
Well,
which is like
On me.
super privileged. Sex work for funsies. I was more like that emperor than like a survival sex worker for sure.
I'd have to read the entirety of it, but basically, yeah. I mean, Children of the Night, because the reason I learned about Children of the Night was because they were the people who were attacking Ashton Kutcher's child prostitution advocacy group. Because we found out they were the ones who attacked it because his group was raising tons of money, and 100% of the funds they were raising were going right back to raising awareness about their own group.
So they're
all
just
they
raising
did,
money to make commercials.
all they did, the only thing they did with
like
any
the
of the money that people
SPCA.
gave them was make more commercials saying, "Give money to us," because we're trying to raise awareness. And we found out
Well,
also
technically,
they
they
were
only
lying
have to
about the
use
numbers.
10% of it.
They lied about the numbers. They didn't use any of it. They used nothing. All their advocacy money was
They-
going
they-
right back to raising awareness about the problem, which they were using fake statistics about. And Children of the Night said, "What we do is make beds for children who are going to be hookers if they have to be homeless." And we're saying the only way you stop children from being prostitutes is to give them a
Give
bed
them
to
a place
sleep
to
in.
sleep. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the idea that it was a great thing that Kutcher got in trouble for that because it was such pure masturbation and just trying to make themselves look great by saying all the money should go to making people know that I'm helping even though I'm not helping.
Yep.
That's the only reason I went to them specifically, because I was like, they seem like they know what they're talking about, because they were actually trying to make less children, because that's by the way a big part of prostitution. Just a little quick segue. A big reason that children become prostitutes, specifically male prostitutes,
No choice.
is because in this country, because of our homophobia based in religion,
Yep.
young gay
Kicked out of their
boys
house.
get kicked out of their house
Yeah.
and have to have sex with pedophiles to survive.
I'll also say that there's a pretty big chunk of survival sex workers that are running away from one bad situation into another. And so a lot of these kids are choosing to engage in sex work because labor laws prevent them from having, like, the other employment opportunities are taken away from them, and going home is unthinkable for one of infinity reasons.
Yeah.
Right, because
So there's a lot of unintended negative consequences for thinking, wouldn't it be nice if, right? Wouldn't it be nice if nobody got an abortion? Wouldn't it be nice if nobody had to do prostitution? Wouldn't it be nice if people only had the kind of sex that makes me come? I mean, like,
it's really weird how much I cringe hearing you say those words without singing it.
wouldn't it be nice
If we weren't
old
hookers. Old pros.
I just look, it's like as long as it's illegal, we're gonna always be splitting hairs about how it should be enforced, because if people don't believe it should be illegal at all, you're always gonna want to have less crackdown on it.
Right.
And because we all agree that children should be protected, it's just
It seems
We
like
just-
a low blow move to be like, this will help save children based on nothing.
Because we don't know for sure. We don't know how it's going to be executed, but it feels like this is stop people from smoking pot because of opium addicts.
Right.
Stop people from getting porn because of child porn.
Right. Well, the white.
But I also feel like you have to try it out to see if it's effective or not. And I think that you're going to have a hard sell saying that, oh, well, we don't care if children are being trafficked because I'm worried about my website being taken down.
I don't think anyone's saying that.
I think it's a little beyond that, though, like because you keep on saying that it would just inconvenience prostitutes, and Caitlin is saying that it could endanger and possibly cause the death of prostitutes.
Well, let's look at how this has played out in the past.
That's more than an inconvenience.
I disagree with that.
This anti-trafficking rhetoric sounds an awful lot like the white slavery like fears that were running up and down the East Coast during the 19th century, right?
I'm sorry. I apologize. I don't really think I know what white slavery means.
It's
one of those terms that I feel
no
like
one
I've heard
does.
many
Is
times,
that one of
and I
those
don't
things
know
that
what
didn't
the
exist?
I don't know
It's
what
one
white
of those
Like
things that
satanic
didn't exist.
ritual
Does it just
abuse?
mean white people being enslaved?
slavery?
It means the young, innocent girls who, if only they knew better, are lured into a life of sin. And if we just give them more Bible verses, don't raise their wages. That's not the problem. If we just give them better manners.
So when they said white slavery,
they meant prostitution.
They literally meant
White
that the
women in
slaves
prostitution
are white.
Yes.
Because
Yes.
God
It's
forbid.
It's
Is that where the word white comes from?
sex.
White slavery?
white female purity was the obsession.
Wait, does it literally mean Caucasian slaves?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. It
But,
literally means
specifically
Caucasian
for,
slaves.
like sex, though. It's not like
Yes.
an indentured servant. It's
That
like,
is insane.
No, in fact, indentured servants who were frequently turning to prostitution to increase their slave-like wages, were part of the problem.
Well, it wasn't slave-like because slaves had no wages, but
Right. Well, but like
Some did.
they weren't.
African slaves in America did not have wages, but a lot of like Rome, you were still a slave because you couldn't choose your job, but there was still a monetary system. They still had. They were treated a lot better than African American slaves in America.
Right.
Is what I'm saying.
Yes.
If we're going historically, there were a
Right.
lot of times when slavery was not nearly as horrifying as what we in America think of as what slavery is.
And if you owned one, you could have sex with it whenever you wanted because they weren't quite human,
They
even
weren't
though.
people.
Yeah, but that was
they
going to be
got paid.
true of your domestic servant who you were paying wages to also, which was one of the problems. Like
Yeah.
when I studied this in college, one of the interesting things that I turned up is that the unintended pregnancy rate for domestic servants was actually higher than that of women that worked in brothels, because women that worked in brothels could trade information with each other about contraception in
Yeah.
a way that isolated domestic servants couldn't, who were also frequently raped by the person that they were working for. So, I mean, it's...
Hey guys, how about instead of trying to arrest people for doing this, we just tell men to stop raping?
Yeah, that's the answer.
Why don't we just
need a
tell,
PSA.
Why don't we just tell men to stop
If
doing
we
these
just tell them
things?
it's bad, it'll stop, right? They just don't know it's bad.
Well, I mean, did you ever
Well, now
try
we're gonna
telling
have to
your
go
friends?
into toxic masculinity, and this is going to be a whole nother hour. But we're going to have to wrap
We
this
just don't
up.
have time for toxic masculinity.
We
How
do
come we
not.
never talk about toxic femininity? How is that? I'm
It's called toxic shock syndrome, and it happens when you leave your tampon in too long.
yeah. Let's talk about it.
But before we all go, I just want to give everyone some time to go over their social media, what projects they're working on, where everyone can follow them. Heather, I'll start with you.
Okie dokie. I am Heidi Knights, HeideeNYTES online. Heather Height is, I do comedy, not as good as my porn. Just, but if you could probably find, I'm performing comedy on Saturday in, I think, the Greenwich Village Comedy Club.
Oh, nice.
But it's not as sexy as, but we just finished our first full-length feature fetish film.
Oh, cool.
Full-length feature fetish film. It'll be on Amazon on demand. You can follow me, Heidi Knights, on everywhere, Facebook, Twitter, and the Instagram thing, HeideeNYTES, and there will be updates, like so many, as soon as it goes live.
Right.
We currently have a clips for sale store. The number of the studio I can never remember, but if you go to HeidiKnights.com or Dave's Custom Media.com, it's a new website. You can find links to our clips for sale store and we just started doing like full length, meaning like an hour long, just me beating a guy,
Okay.
not off. I mean, with weapons. Like,
All right.
You know. So that's that.
Gee.
Yeah.
Which is way more legal than if you were jerking him off, which feels wrong, right?
Doesn't that feel
I
wrong?
understand. I understand
matter
that the
of
whipping was
choice.
consensual, but like, doesn't it just feel?
I
okay.
can I can leave marks and
Yeah, you drop blood. I mean,
Yeah.
like this. All right.
Okay, Dave Cyrus, Cyrus, Twitter and Instagram. If you Google my name on YouTube, all kinds of things will come up. There's my Brickstone videos, which have millions of hits, as well as lots of other videos that have much less hits, and that I prefer you look at those. Caitlin.
Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter. My parents spelled my name weird. It is Kaytlin.
Oh, God.
I know, right? It's just you can see the trailer trash coming out. Caitlin Bailey, Bailey.
No wonder you're a hooker.
Fuck you. If you care, if you want to hear more about sex worker activism or sex work generally, you can follow our podcast on Twitter. It's Old Pro Podcast on Twitter and Instagram, and listen to the podcast. It's the oldest profession. Fellow mouthy whore comic Wendy Starling and I tell a different story from a sex worker in history every week.
Who was invited to be here today?
She is busy.
So you can follow Blamestorming on Twitter at the Blamestorm. You can check out our old shows on our website, theblamestorm.com. You can follow me on Twitter at Marissa Smith. And I am going to be at the Bowery Electric on the 22nd for Women of Color for Progress. It's a fundraiser to raise funds for women of color that are trying to get elected to public office. And you will see us soon, you guys.
One thing.
Yeah.
I'll be at the Fairfield Comedy Club on the 16th. But also, I just wanted to say, if anyone is religious and would like to convert me to their religion, I want to start a new segment on this show called Drag Me to Heaven. I will hear you out and argue with you for as long as you'll stay.
Okay, so we are looking for religious people that would like to drag Dave to heaven.
that so makes me wish that Satanists recruited people, because that sounds like so much fun.
Yeah.
I mean, if you know one, I'm willing to hear him out.
Well, we don't do that. I
They-
am
they
one, but we
don't
don't do that.
recruit.
No, I
Yeah.
mean one that would be interesting and just.
Oh.
proselytizing. Yeah.
I wonder if they like we don't do
All right,
it.
we're gonna wrap
Yeah,
this up,
bye.
you guys. Bye.
Bye. Sorry, I'm just totally like, oh, let's start this whole conversation now.
Oh yeah, perfect, great.
No, I do want a Satanist. I would love a Satanist to be one of the people.
I was like, I should introduce you to
Because you don't have to
Tantrika.
proselytize. You can just be
Yeah, as long
trying
as
to.
you would be able to tolerate Dave stating over and over again that we do not proselytize, he would probably be happy to do it.
But he'd be happy to proselytize at you while explaining
I mean, Jews
that
don't proselytize
they don't.
To anyone that aren't already Jews. So technically, they could do that for me. But
Yeah,
but
they
yeah.
really only pray with the Jewish people.
Well, yeah, they don't. Conversion is not accepted in Judaism. We do not want people to convert to